IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. It's Friday, means championship weekend starts tonight. I'm Brian Driscoll. That's right there, Andrew McDonough, my guy. Andrew did such a great job in the post-game show after the pit that I was like, I got to get my guy back on. And so Trevor was unavailable today, and I was like, and I got to get Andrew on. I think this will be a blast. But we are going to preview all the championship games for this weekend. And we're going to talk a lot of different angles for games that will impact Notre Dame. We will talk about that. But we're also just going to kind of preview the matchups and talk about the playoff implications of each matchup and dive into the matchup and what we like about it. And then at the end of each game, we will give our predictions. So we will do the 4 Power 4 conferences, plus we'll spend a little bit of time on the American Conference Championship and then a little bit on some of the other conference championships as well, Trev. And we're going to go in order of the Power 4 games first, and we're going kind of in order of kickoff. But, man, I am really looking forward to this weekend, Andrew, because there's a lot on the line this weekend. I mean, there's some teams that are playing this weekend. Indiana, Ohio State, the loser's fine as far as being in the playoff. Most likely in the SEC championship game, that's also true, although a butt-whooping – from Alabama might shake that up. But Big 12, there's a lot on the line. The ACC, there's a lot on the line. The G5, there could potentially be 2 G5 teams in this weekend. Man, there is a lot to talk about. And, man, the playoff, it could just kind of, if like the last few weeks, everything's kind of been chalk, right, for the last few weeks. If that goes the way, again, this weekend, then we kind of know what the playoff is going to look like. If it doesn't, boy, Sunday could get very, very interesting, and I'm very much looking forward to just how all these games are going to play out.
Absolutely, Brian. First off, thanks for having me back. It's great to be back on the show, and it's going to be a great weekend of football, that's for sure. Now we're going to complain about more football, and with the expanded playoff, so many teams are still alive. A lot of drama on the line. I think you brought it up. Big Ten, I think both those teams are safely in, like you said. SEC, the committee wants Alabama in. We saw that with the rankings this past Tuesday. Big 12, chance for 2 teams and a step toward more legitimacy for that league. And speaking of legitimacy, I really feel like the future of the ACC as a football conference, it's not going to be, it immediately disbands, but next year. But the future of the ACC as a football conference is a bit in limbo right now, especially if Duke were to win. If Miami gets left out, we're left with no ACC representative in the college football playoff. A big financial hit to the conference, a big prestige hit. So I think that Virginia-Duke game is going to be very, very interesting. And then big opportunities for a school like James Madison, just joined the FBS in 2022. What a story. Kurt Signetti, Bob Chesney, and Chesney now going to UCLA. So it's going to be a great weekend of football. Excited to break it down and be here again.
Yes, it is going to absolutely be a blast. There's no doubt about that. You talk about the ACC. We're going to dive into that matchup, but I think that's a fascinating point, Andrew, because a lot of this is their own freaking fault. Like the American Conference had the intelligence to say our number 2 tiebreaker is going to be who's highest ranked in the college football playoff rankings.
Mm-hmm.
That's what our tiebreaker is going to be. The fact that the ACC didn't have the intelligence to do that, and then the fact that they spent all their time the last month going after Notre Dame instead of the fact that why are 5 SEC teams in a year where the SEC is down, in a year where we whooped the SEC in the last weekend of the season in a lot of our matchups, and then one of our 4th or 5th best team took their best team down to the wire in Georgia Tech and Georgia. Why are they getting 5 and we may get 0? But that's why I keep saying, like, the Pac-12 did not falter because it didn't have a big enough fan base. Andrew, you live out in Washington. You know how rabid the fan base is at Washington and in Oregon and at Arizona and Arizona State and Utah and Colorado. The problem was they had terrible leadership, and it ruined the conference. And by the time you might have got somebody in that could save it, maybe it was too late. And unfortunately, Jim Phillips has absolutely run the ACC into the ground. And the fact that he doesn't have enough intelligence to say, hey, let's go with this angle, let's fight this fight. But instead, we're going to spend the next month tearing down a team in our own league, a team that we have an affiliation with for football and is in our league for every other sport that we have outside of hockey, which we don't have. just shows the lack of leadership in that league. And it's kind of like, you know what? They kind of deserve to not have anybody in. I don't know that that's how it's going to be. We'll talk about that when we get to the ACC matchup. But I think the ACC absolutely shot itself in the left foot this year for much of the year. And then late in the year, shot itself in the right foot and then kneecapped itself this past week.
Absolutely. It's crazy how fast it happened. You rewind to week 1. You had Florida State take down Alabama. You had Miami beat Notre Dame in a close game. The ACC was riding high. And since then, like you pointed out, it has just been an exercise in ineptitude the whole way through, from the arguments that they're making, from the fact that in their scheduling. One thing that I think is starting to make some of the rounds in the national discussion is with these giant conferences, there's not balanced conference schedules. But Duke and Miami only shared 2 common ACC opponents in NC State and Syracuse. And it really was kind of Indiana's fault, but the ACC let one of the teams that's playing in their championship game that has one conference loss played a non-conference game against NC State and lost. Virginia lost to NC State, but it didn't count in the ACC standings. It's complex. They didn't do a good job of scheduling. To your point, they did not do a good job of thinking through the tiebreakers. And now the best team in their conference is sitting at home, currently on the outside looking in, and hoping that they might get some pity from the committee, even though their resume is totally set in stone and will not change at all. And the committee has said consistently Miami is behind Notre Dame, Miami is behind BYU, Miami is behind Alabama. Nothing is going to change with Miami's resume. We will learn nothing more about the Hurricanes. And that's the best football team in the ACC, hands down. But you have a team that lost to UConn, a team that lost to Tulane, who the ACC is competing with for a bid, that's now having a chance to play for the conference title and could win. Duke can score. We're going to talk about it. Duke can score. They can't stop anybody. But it's just an exercise in ineptitude. You point out the Pac-12, and it's similar. The Pac-12 paid out more money than any conference back in 2015. They almost got Texas and Oklahoma to join. Larry Scott ran the conference into the ground. The schools dispersed. And now you're left with 2 teams and then picking up some of the Mountain West. It's going to be very interesting to see if the ACC is left out, what happens in the future. You can bet Jim Phillips, the rest of the conference, they're going to be big Virginia fans. And I know that you guys always joke about it. We talked about it after the Pitt game in the last show, but the ACC officiating, always questionable. And boy, any close call is going to go for the Cavaliers this weekend.
It better. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. So let's just briefly talk about Notre Dame. This is not going to be a Notre Dame dominant show because Notre Dame's not playing this weekend. But obviously there will be a lot of different things that are going to impact Notre Dame this weekend, Andrew, as you look at the different games. Obviously, what happens in the SEC title game is something that Notre Dame fans will have a lot of interest in. We'll talk about that when we get to that game. What happens in the ACC championship actually impacts Notre Dame. I'll explain why I think that might be. It's a little bit conspiratorial, but I'll share my thoughts on that. But then, of course, the Big 12 championship is going to have a big impact on that. But another conference championship game that we're going to talk about later in the show is the Mountain West Conference, because there's a lot of thought that, well, this weekend won't change anything for Notre Dame. Well, what if Boise State beats UNLV and Notre Dame now has on their resume, we beat the Mountain West Conference champions by 3 touchdowns? You know, I mean, that's going to be part of it. Like, yeah, they went 8-4, but 2 of those losses happened when they lost their starting quarterback, who is now going to be back for the game against UNLV. Mm-hmm. So lot to discuss today, man, lot to discuss today. We're going to actually get started. So the way we're going to go through this is we're going to kind of go through each conference, and we're going to go through kickoff. We're going to start with the Power 4 conferences first. And so we'll start with like the noon kickoff, then go to 4 and break it down that way. And then we'll kind of circle back to the group of 5 games, which all but 2 being played tonight. So Boise plays tonight. I think the American Conference Championship game is also being played tonight. So we're going to kind of have an idea. The field is going to start to get set tonight. So we're going to know, is North Texas or Tulane going to be in the playoff? Will James Madison be able to kind of put their best foot forward as being there to ready to take that spot should, for some reason, Duke upset Virginia? We're going to know if Notre Dame's resume got improved this weekend, but because Boise State plays UNLV tonight. And then, of course, tomorrow you have the MAC championship. We're going to get our final bit of MACtion, which is the only interesting note for Notre Dame in the MACtion championship, because Notre Dame didn't play the MAC team this season, is 2 former Notre Dame assistant coaches are going to be going against each other in that game. Lance Taylor and Chuck Martin are obviously going to be candidates there. So I am curious about. I had heard some rumblings that Lance Taylor was up for the UAB job. I haven't heard. Did they hire a coach?
I've not seen
I have
one
to
yet.
look into that. I'm curious if maybe they're waiting until after this game, because obviously Lance Taylor's an Alabama native. So, but it's going to be a fun weekend, Trev, and the big action starts tomorrow at noon, and that's going to be number 11 BYU, the 11-1 Cougars at number 4 Texas Tech, also 11-1. Game is going to be played in Arlington, Texas, of course, at AT&T Stadium. It'll be at noon kickoff tomorrow on Saturday. It'll be on ABC. FanDuel, our friends at FanDuel, have Texas Tech listed as a 12.5-point favorite. Over under in this game at 49.5. Of course, these two teams played on November 8th, a game that Texas Tech dominated. It was 29-7, but if you watch that game, it wasn't that close of a game. Texas Tech stubbed their toe a lot in the red zone, had to settle for a lot of field goals. That was an absolutely dominant performance. Let's talk about what's at stake. I think there's this assumption that if Texas Tech loses, they're both going to be in. I think that's how it should be, to be honest with you. I don't know that that's a given, though, especially if BYU wins a convincing game. And the reason I say that is because when you look at the different metrics that the committee looks at, there's a reason why, in my opinion, that it took a while for Texas Tech to really climb up above some of those teams, and it took them to kind of have some of their big wins later in the year where they beat a scrappy Kansas State team, beat BYU in Baron Morton's first game back. And there's a lot of things I like about Texas Tech's resume, but there's also some things on there that are a little bit troubling. They're 2-1 against currently ranked teams, which is good. If they lose this game, they're now 2-2. They've only had 3 quality wins on the season. BYU actually has twice as many as that. They have 6. They have the 99th best strength of schedule. Their strength of record is only 10th. Their game control is very good at 3rd. And then obviously their other metrics are very strong, which is why they're a top 5 team in most computer models. Massey has them 9th. If they lose a close game, I think they're in. I think they should be in. If they lose and don't look good, I don't think it's a given that Texas Tech is going to stay in the playoff rankings. I'm not saying that's true or not, because what we don't know is how will they evaluate playoff games, conference championships compared to regular season games. We've seen teams go from 4 to 5 to 10 or 11 when they lose regular season games, but will they treat conference championship games the same? If they treat them like they did last year, Texas Tech is fine. As long as you don't get destroyed, they'll stay in the top 10. But, that's more because that's how they treated the Big Ten and the SEC. We don't necessarily know how they're going to treat teams this year. And the other thing, too, is when SMU lost their second game last year, they still had fewer losses than teams like Alabama, Ole Miss, teams that people were complaining about. This year, if they get that second loss, they're going to be going against teams that have 2 losses that now have the same number of losses. And when you look at how the committee looks at data, from what I've been told, the committee does not consider FCS games. So if they lose to BYU, they're 10-10. Same record as Notre Dame, same record as Miami, same record as Vanderbilt, with a really bad strength of schedule. So I think they're in if they win. They're in if they win, no doubt. I think they're in if they lose a somewhat competitive game. I'll be very curious to see how the committee handles if they were to lose convincingly. To be honest with you, I think they should still be in. I don't think a team should go from 4th to out unless they get beat by like 30. That's just kind of how I feel about it, especially since you already beat this team by 22 in a month ago. But I don't think it's a given that Texas Tech is in, because I don't know that the Big 12 is going to get the same respect that the SEC and the Big 10 do. What are your thoughts on that, Andrew, as you look at this from a Texas Tech standpoint?
I agree with you. I think that even with the loss, Texas Tech still deserves to be in the field. But again, sure, there's been the conspiracies out there, especially with some of the comments that Joey McGuire made about BYU joined a conference. He's got more respect for them than Notre Dame. Like, hey, does Texas Tech want to be here? I think there's a lot of upside for Texas Tech too. Currently sitting at number 4 with an opportunity to maybe jump up to number 2, depending on how the games shake out this weekend, and be on the opposite side of the bracket from Ohio State. And so there's a lot of upside for the Red Raiders in this matchup.
Yep.
Staying away from Ohio State, because right now you're going to face Ohio State in the semis if you're the 4. And so I think that if you're Texas Tech, though, a loss also enables you to have your resume compared to the Notre Dames, to the Miamis, and the stats you're pointing out. I'm looking at Notre Dame's right now, and Texas Tech would be behind Notre Dame in offensive efficiency, overall team efficiency, FPI, Sagarin, strength of schedule, strength of record would take a hit, game control would take a hit with the loss. And you're not saying with them dropping out that they're dropping all the way to 13. 11's going to the ACC or the group of 5, 12's going to the group of 5, 10 would be BYU. So again, dropping to 10, you all of a sudden put yourself on the bubble.
Now, I want to be clear. I don't think they should. And I don't know what's going to happen. This is we said, well, last year the every conference champion dropped a spot. The SEC and Big Ten dropped a spot. The ACC champ only dropped 2. The Big 12 champ only dropped 2 and got blown out, but they were 16 to 18. There was no need to move them. I think they should be in if they lose, barring it being a 30-point loss. What I'm saying is I don't give the committee enough credit to do what is right if it doesn't include an SEC or Big Ten team. Just so people understand where I'm coming from. I'm not arguing that they should be out. I'm arguing that I wouldn't. If I'm Texas Tech, I'm not assuming that we're in no matter what. And that leads me to one of the talking points we've heard this week. And it's been a little bit of paranoia from some Notre Dame and Miami fans, is mostly Notre Dame fans that I've seen, but I've seen some Miami fans make it as well. Well, what if Texas Tech kind of throws the game? What if they don't really care? They know they're in. They're 4. They're not going to drop out. So maybe they don't try as hard because they want to get a second team in. Number one, I think it's absurd to think that they're going to throw a game or not try as hard in the game because they care so much about the Big 12 that they're going to sacrifice for themselves, number one. Number two, they drop down to at least 8 if they get beat by BYU. At least 8. Maybe 9, because I think BYU would then leap them because BYU would be 12-1 and Texas Tech would be 11-2. And BYU won the neutral field game where Texas Tech won at home. Now, all of a sudden, you may lose the ability to go and play at home or get a bye. Right now, if Texas Tech wins, they get a bye. Worst case scenario, they get screwed if they win and they're hosting James Madison or Tulane or North Texas. Right? Like that's the worst case scenario if they get screwed and they're got the 5 seed bottom. But where I'm at is I just don't know that if I'm Texas Tech, I trust the playoff committee enough for how they treated the Big 12 to say that definitely they're going to still host a playoff game or even be in if they lose. But I think they should, because no, Texas Tech has not played a tough schedule. Like, we can be honest about that. They have the 99th ranked schedule in the country, but there's a reason their strength of record is still 10th. And I think the only reason it's 10th is because they lost a game without Baron Morton in the game. They beat Arizona State if he plays, in my opinion. They absolutely do. That was the first game without him. So I think that if you look at Texas Tech, I think they have some very good wins that are getting overlooked. It's not that they beat Utah on the road that I look at as much. It's that they destroyed Utah on the road. It was a close game for a little while. Second half, they absolutely pounded Utah. It's not that they beat a ranked Houston team on the road that impresses me so much. It's that they whooped Houston on the road. Same thing with BYU. That game was not nearly as close as 29-7. They dominated that football game and were sloppy. Like, that wasn't even close to their best performance of the season. And they still won by 22 points. So I'm of the belief that Texas Tech, if they lose, should still be ahead of Ole Miss, should still be ahead of Texas A&M, because I'm not someone who believes that you punish a team dramatically if they lose a championship game unless they get pounded. Because it's like, well, yeah, you have an extra loss. Yeah, but nobody else has a comparable data point because they're not playing this weekend. So unless you just look bad, I don't believe you should drop teams dramatically. If I think you could drop them, but I don't think it's a given that you should drop a team. If you're talking about the difference between Bama and Notre Dame, where the committee's been kind of waffling back and forth, that extra data point where they get beat by Georgia, a team they beat, that should be enough to drop them below Notre Dame, but it shouldn't drop them out unless they get destroyed. That's kind of where I come from on this stuff. I do think it could go from, like, let's say Indiana's 2 to maybe not getting a bye. Maybe, but then again, you're going to drop them below Oregon, the team they beat on the road. So, like, that's where I'm at. I just don't think conference championship games should have dramatic negatives on teams unless they just get destroyed. But again, it's more about, I don't know how the committee's going to treat this, because last year there weren't 2 Big 12 teams in the whoever lost the Big 12 championship last year was out. It was a given. But Texas Tech, you're not just playing for a Big 12 championship. You're not just playing to make the playoff. You're playing to host or get a bye. And I think that's absolutely why we're going to get Texas Tech's best shot. BYU, on the other hand, it's easy. You win, you're in. You lose, you're out. That's the reality of it. I do think BYU has an argument to make that they deserve to be ranked higher, but the committee, for whatever reason, doesn't really look at them. And I get why. I mean, the parts of their resume are good. They've got 6 quality wins. They've got 2 wins over ranked opponents. Their strength of schedule is 50th, which isn't bad. Their strength of record is 6th, but their game control is 14th. I think that hurts them. Their offense is either they're 20th, 44th, 33rd, and 27th in all the offensive metrics, and their defense is 15th, 29th, 17th, and 10th. So in a lot of the metrics, they only really rank in the top 10 of 2 or 3 of the different metrics that they look at. And I think that hurts them. It's like, yeah, you're winning a lot of games, but you're winning a lot of ugly games. And I don't know if you're the best. That's fair or not. I'm just saying that's what I think why the committee's dinging BYU for being an 11-1 team with 6 quality wins, which is more than anybody else in the playoff conversation. I just don't think the committee looks at that and views that as impressive as maybe some other teams who are just more convincing. Like, yeah, they beat Arizona by 3. They beat Colorado by 3. They beat Arizona by 6 in overtime. They beat Utah, by 3. And I think that's more of what's hurt them. But BYU's been far more impressive since the loss to Texas Tech. They've won all 3 of their games since by double digits. But then the committee's going to look at that and say, yeah, but you were down 14-0 to a 4-8 UCF team. I think that's the thing that's hurt BYU. So they are in a position, Andrew, where they've got to win if they want to get in.
They are. And even the Cincinnati game, Cincinnati misses 3 field goals. BYU tacks on a touchdown with less than a minute left as they were running out the clock. Like, that game easily could have gone the other way. BYU has an opportunity. They feel disrespected. They've started to ramp up the social media pressure. I saw a graphic today where they were comparing their strength of schedule and quality wins against Notre Dame. But BYU has something that Miami does not, that Texas does not, that Vanderbilt does not. They have an opportunity to prove the committee wrong. And they're going to come into this game fired up to make the playoff, but also with the burst of energy because Kalani Sitake decided to stay at BYU. And that's a big jolt of energy for the program that Penn State, a perceived national power, targeted their coach, and he chose to stay. He's an alum, but they put together a nice NIL package. They increased his salary. They've been very committed to basketball, but now they're starting to invest in the football program in a way that has to have BYU fans fired up. So I think BYU's – yeah, go ahead.
No, finish. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
I think they're going to come into this game with a lot of energy. I think they're going to try to start fast, get on Texas Tech, and try to hang on. I mean, that's going to be the key for them.
The problem is I just don't know if they have the horses to get it done. I think this game could be competitive early, but I don't think they have the horses to get it done. I don't think that they can throw the ball effectively against Texas Tech. They can throw the ball on some other teams in their league, but they struggle to throw the ball against Cincinnati. They struggle to throw the ball against Texas Tech. They struggle to throw the ball against Utah. Now, they ran well on those teams, but those teams don't have Texas Tech's front 7. That is without a doubt the best front 7 in the Big 12. And in my opinion, one of the best front 7s in college football. You obviously have the defensive line transfers. You've got David Bailey, who came from Stanford, Romello Height, who came from Georgia Tech via USC. And then, of course, you have Jacob Rodriguez, a linebacker, who's one of the best stories in college football this year. Former walk-on, just a tremendous story. But, I mean, it's more than a story. He's a phenomenal player. That's a
Yep.
really good team. And if they have a weakness, and I do believe Texas Tech has a weakness, not a weakness, but like a weakness for a good playoff team. Everybody has some level of weakness this year. There's no team, Ohio State included, Notre Dame included, Indiana included, that doesn't have some area where a playoff caliber team can take advantage of it. The problem is for BYU is that weakness, a relative weakness compared to other, when you play playoff teams or teams like BYU, is their secondary can be had, assuming you can protect the quarterback. Problem for BYU is they don't throw the ball very well, and they're not great in pass pro. It's a bad matchup. That's why BYU beat everybody else but got smoked by Texas Tech. It's a bad matchup. And football's a game. Andrew, people who don't know, Andrew's an offensive coordinator at the high school level. You know this. You may say, well, we're playing this team who lost to that team. We smoked that other team, but I'm more worried about this game than when we played that team because the matchup against us is much more favorable to them. I think this is a bad matchup for Texas Tech or for BYU. And that's the issue. I think they are better than everybody else in the Big 12 in the trenches. That's what's been good for them. They're very well coached. They're physical. I love the job Kalani Sitake's doing. But if they're going to win this game, Bear Bachmeier's going to have to make some plays with his arm, and they're going to have to be able to pressure Baron Morton on the other side of the ball. That's really going to be the key to success for BYU because they just don't match up as well in the trenches as Texas Tech. And the other concern that BYU has is they're not real fast. They're not a real athletic team. Roberts is a heck of a receiver. He's probably their most athletic guy. LJ Martin's a heck of a running back. But you could see in the Texas Tech game that guys were getting to him a little bit quicker than some of the other Big 12 teams on defense, and he just didn't have the same room to run. Bear Bachmeier's a horse, man. I mean, he's a bull in the backfield, but he doesn't have great speed and the athleticism to really do the damage against Texas Tech like he does to a lot of other teams. That's their drawback. They're going to have to find a way to neutralize that if they're going to be able to go out there and beat Texas Tech. They can beat Texas Tech. Don't get me wrong. It's just they're going to have to play their A game, and they're going to need Texas Tech to make some mistakes. I think that's going to be the key in this football game.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree with you. BYU is not – Texas Tech is a tough matchup for BYU. I think for BYU to win this game, it's about offensive balance. LJ Martin, you brought him up last time against Texas Tech, 10 carries, 35 yards rushing. This guy's rushed for over 1,200 yards. He's a power back. He's not going to pull away.
He's really good.
He's really good. And he's physical, and I think he was a little dinged up last time they played
in that Texas Tech game. He was, yeah. He played through some injuries in that game,
Yeah, with him healthy, it's going to be the key is finding the offensive balance because Texas Tech has been dominant against Big 12 opponents. I was taking a look at stats, just the Red Raiders and BYU against the Big 12 and taking out the FCS teams that they played and some of the weaker opponents. Texas Tech has 59 plays of over 20 yards, and they're converting over 50% of their third downs against conference opponents. And then on the other side of the ball, like you're talking about, their defense, they're only allowing 78 rushing yards per game and only 30% third down conversions, and they're really good at limiting explosive plays. So BYU is going to have to drive the ball against the front seven for Texas Tech that's really good and is really good at limiting the run. It's going to put this on the shoulders of the freshman Bear Bachmeier. Like you said, he's a bully. Where's number 47 as a quarterback? It just always looks a little bit odd, but it's been really effective this year. And
man, that tight end that they've got taking Wildcat snaps is
it's like,
good.
Is that Tyler
football,
Warren?
Man. Exactly.
But the key for them will be stay ahead of the sticks, find that offensive balance, find a way to hit some explosive plays. BYU against Big 12 opponents has a +7 turnover margin. Texas Tech, though, +11. But it's BYU is going to need a couple bounces to go their way. Special teams play, something like that, in order to pull this one out.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and they lost that battle in their matchup before. Texas Tech still turned it over twice, and it wasn't enough because BYU turned it over 3 times.
Right.
I just think Texas Tech has too much speed, and they match up too well in the trenches. So let's talk predictions, Andrew. So obviously we dove into this matchup a little bit. We'll start with you. Give me your prediction and just quickly how you see this game playing out.
So I'll take BYU to cover, but I'm going to go Texas Tech 31, BYU 24. So 12.5 is the spread. So I think it's close. I think BYU gets a jump. Like I said, shot in the arm to the program. Kalani Sitake, beloved coach, member of the community. I think he's also in their athletic department as like an associate AD. He's going to be staying. They have a lot to play for. They're feeling disrespected, but Texas Tech is ultimately the better team here. A couple matchups that I really like. Texas Tech is really good at getting teams off the field on third down, like I talked about. And BYU only converts 38.7% of third downs against their conference opponents. Texas Tech is going to force them to drive the ball. I'm not confident that BYU can put together consistent 10 to 15 play drives. And then BYU has also not been good on defense against allowing explosive plays. Like I talked about, Texas Tech has been very explosive on the offensive side of the ball. So I think ultimately, Texas Tech controls the middle 8, pulls away in the second half and kind of takes the lead and then wins by a touchdown somewhere in that neighborhood. And then like we talked about in the beginning, Texas Tech is also motivated. This would be their first Big 12 championship. This is a chance, like I was saying, to avoid Ohio State and possibly jump up to the 2 seed, depending on what happens in the SEC. And then you mentioned Jacob Rodriguez. They want to get him to New York. I mean, if you compare his season to Manti Te'o in 2012, it compares very favorably. He's got 101 tackles, 7 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions. Like you said, former walk-on, great player. This is the first game of the day. For me, this is 9 a.m. Pacific time. Wake up Saturday morning, have some breakfast, get a cup of coffee, and watch some football.
I got to ask you, you're a West Coast guy. Were you even tired by the time the Notre Dame game started? Because
I was. And the way that fourth quarter went, it was putting me to sleep anyway. And it was a long, frustrating day of watching football.
Yes,
until the Irish jumped all over Stanford.
Yes, it was. Here's where I'm at, Andrew. I actually have BYU. I have Texas Tech covering in this game. I think it'll be one of those games where it's going to be more competitive than the last game. I think it's one of those games, though, where BYU it's close early, late second quarter, third quarter. Texas Tech kind of pulls away. They go up 14. BYU scores to make it 7. Texas Tech goes up 14. BYU scores to make it 7. And then Texas Tech punches one in the last few minutes of the game, and that's the margin. So it's a 14-point game that I think will be more competitive than the final score. I just think Texas Tech has a statement to make, and I think they will put that thing away. At the end of the day, BYU just can't handle the speed and power combination that Texas Tech has. Arizona State's more built for that. Arizona State can run with Texas Tech, and they're pretty good in the trenches. And when you take Baron Morton out of the offense, it made Texas Tech one-dimensional because their backup was more of a runner and wasn't as good of a thrower when they played comparable teams. And I think that's why they lost that football game. Unfortunately for BYU, I don't think that their team is built to do that. They're a tough team, well-coached team. Again, Kalani Sittai, like I said, I think the 3 coaches of the year should have been, and the finalists should have been Tony Elliott. With all due respect to the guys that were Tony Elliott, Clark Lee, and Joey McGuire. You could make a case, however, that Kalani Sitake needs to be in there too. He's doing a tremendous job at BYU. But I just don't think they have the horses to win this game. I'm going BYU 34 and Texas Tech 34 and BYU 30. All right, Andrew, next game on our list is the SEC Championship, which will be taking place between number 3 Georgia, who's 11-1, against number 9 Alabama, who is 10-2. This game will be played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. I do miss it being played in the Sugar Bowl. I'm not going to lie. I do miss it being played in the Superdome, but I get why they've made the change. The game will be at 4 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Georgia is only a 2.5-point favorite in this game, according to FanDuel, and the FanDuel over-under is that they have this game at 48.5. So going to be they expect it to be, once again, a tight battle between Alabama and Georgia, and this is another rematch. There's a lot of rematches this weekend. Not all of them, but of the Power 4 conferences, 3 of the 4 are rematches. And all but this game were rematches from a November game. This is a game that took place September 27th in Athens. Alabama went on the road and beat Georgia 24-21. The Bulldogs had multiple chances late in that game to get points and just couldn't capitalize. I think they missed a field goal. They had a turnover a red zone turnover in that game. And it was a game that Alabama was able to come out on top. And really, that's what Alabama's entire resume has been built around. Rightfully so, is a road win over an otherwise really good Georgia team who's 11-4 and ranked number 3 in the country. So I'm loving this matchup, Andrew. I think it's going to be a battle. we're going to find out, does Kirby Smart truly have an Alabama problem? And let me rephrase. We know Kirby Smart has an Alabama problem. Can he fix that Alabama problem? He's 0-2 against Kalen DeBoer, which I think is absolutely wild. I would not have predicted that. But he is. He's 0-2. Can Kirby get back? As Bill Bender said in a show we did last year, nobody plays the disrespected card or the victim card in college football right now better than Kirby Smart. In the last 2 years, he's taken that away from Dabo. Dabo used to be that guy. And we're the number one team in the country, but yeah, let's talk about the Roy bus. Like we're on the rest of y'all bus, even though we're 12-0 and ranked number one in the country, and everyone's disrespecting us, bro. You're number one. But Dabo was great at that. Obviously, Clemson has fallen off. Kirby's now that guy. Like, what was the game recently? They were coming out. I think it was the Ole Miss game, maybe. They were coming out. Kirby had his hands in his hoodie, and I was like, oh yeah, this ain't. No, it wasn't that. Who was it? It was somebody they pounded. It was Mississippi State. I think it was Mississippi State. They pounded somebody, and he came out and he had his hands in his hoodie. Like, oh, Kirby's he's on one today. This team's gonna be fired up, and that's absolutely what they did. So I am very much looking forward to this matchup. I think this is one of those ones where both teams are in if they win, but they are still both playing for something. For Georgia, do you want to buy or do you want to travel? Maybe you host if you lose a second game. You lose to the same team twice. Maybe you host. Maybe still host, but you're playing for a bye. You're playing for one of those top 3 seeds. Honestly, you're playing for the 2 seed, in my opinion. I think that they jump whatever Big Ten team loses. You're playing for the 2 seed. That's what's at stake for Georgia. Do you want to get that 2 seed again? Do you want to be able to play in the Sugar Bowl in round 2, get some payback this year against whoever you play for the loss that you had last year? That's what's at stake for the Bulldogs. And then for Alabama, you're probably in no matter what, but you can't get whooped. But if you're Alabama, if you lose this game, you're traveling in week 1. You're going to Oklahoma or you're going to Texas A&M in week 1, right? In round 1, excuse me. If you win, you may not jump up into the bye cat territory. I don't think they should jump up to the bye territory, but you're definitely hosting a playoff game. So their fortunes dramatically change. So there's a lot on the line for both of these teams, even though I do believe that both of them are going to be in the college football playoff, barring an absolute blowout of Georgia, of Alabama by Georgia. I think that's the only thing that could maybe, if you're Miami, that's what you're hoping for, is that this loss against Georgia is convincing, like 30-point win. If it's a 14 or less game, I think they're just going to be like, well, we're going to still keep Alabama in. That's why I think they moved Alabama ahead of Notre Dame. I think there's a lot of Notre Dame fans that think, oh, this is a conspiracy. They're just trying to get you closer to Miami. I don't think that's it at all. I think they wanted to put Bama at 9. That way, if Bama loses to Georgia, they can just drop them to 10 because you can't not drop a team that loses. You can't sit there and say, because then you're just saying these conference championship games have no bearing whatsoever. They're just no importance whatsoever. You got to drop them. But if you drop them to 11 and the SEC runner-up doesn't make it, the SEC will blow up the entire playoff this offseason. I think this is a self-preservation as much as anything. I don't think it has a whole lot to do with Miami. If you listen to what the commissioner says, he's made it very clear that, hey, Notre Dame's better than Miami. So I think everybody's reading into the move. I think the move was simply to protect Alabama. That way they're in the playoffs if they lose. I don't like it, but I get it. I do, but Bama's got to look good in this game. They've got to be competitive, and if they win the game, next thing you know, they're playing in Tuscaloosa in round 1.
Do you think a game like Georgia-Texas, where it's 35-10, do you think that drops Alabama out?
I think it could, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you're Miami fans and that happens, you need to just leave the words Notre Dame out of your mouth and focus on that. Seriously. Listen, this is a 3-loss team with not great metrics. They lost to a 5-7 team from our league that we beat, and now they went and got beat by 3-4 touchdowns. Like, they showed they're not a playoff team. Because what a blowout says to me is you're not a playoff team. This is my whole thing with Texas. When you lose in November to another playoff team by 25, you're not a playoff team. You can miss me with but we beat this team. I don't care if you beat Vanderbilt. I don't. Vanderbilt has as many. Look, you coached as many top 25 wins this year in the SEC as Vanderbilt did. Like great story. I love what Vanderbilt did this year, but they're not a playoff team. They're not, in my opinion, the 13th or 14th best team in the country. They're very good. I don't care. You're Texas. You're supposed to beat Vanderbilt by 3 at home. That doesn't impress me. The A&M win, very impressive, but that's negated by the Georgia blowout. So what win did you have that negated the fact that you got dominated by Florida, a team that Miami blew out? So this is my whole point. If Bama and this is what Miami's been missing this entire time. You could say, look, there's a team in the playoff that got beat badly by a team that we smacked. That game was not as close as 28-22. It was like 28-0 or 21-0 at one point in time in that game. Florida State scored some garbage points. Another team that's in the conversation that's beat a bunch of these teams, we blew out in Florida. We blew them out, and they went and beat Texas convincingly. That's what they've been missing this entire time. So, the Texas A&M win doesn't negate all of the bad that's in the Texas resume, and that's what Miami should be focusing on, but instead they're there. So I do think a blowout loss could impact that. Will it be enough to drop them out? I think it will be if BYU wins. I think Bama actually gets dropped out, but because the SEC won't have as much of a beef. Like your second best team got beat by 4 touchdowns. What do you want us to do? But if this is a close game, 14 or less, I think Bama's in.
The one scenario that gives me pause, though, is if BYU wins and Alabama loses a close game. Then if Alabama and Notre Dame flip, Alabama goes to 10.
I don't know if they'll flip them in that situation.
Yeah, I think that it's been on the message boards and widely discussed. Like Notre Dame needs Texas Tech to win. Less so about the SEC championship. That's the icing on the cake. That's okay. We got protection in case BYU.
Because I don't think Georgia can blow Alabama out. I think this will be.
No, I don't think so. I mean, Alabama matches up pretty well with Georgia. I mean, they already beat them this year, and like you were talking about, Kirby Smart 1-7 against Alabama. The only win, you got a trophy for it, national championship, but
pretty big win.
Yeah, pretty
big win. I'll
go 1-7 against a lot of teams if I win a national championship. But.
Exactly. Hey, Ohio State can beat Notre Dame the next 3 times they play, the last 3 times they played, but Notre Dame beats them in the title game this year. I'll take it.
Yeah, flags fly forever. But the other thing, like you were saying, is Georgia chance to move up to the 2, which again I keep talking about this, but puts them on the other side of the bracket from Ohio State. I mean, Georgia is looking at matchup. Just like all these teams are. Georgia got a bad matchup last year against Notre Dame. They, got dominated in that game. And so I think they're wanting to get away from Ohio State, which is another team that they don't match up super well against, in my mind. For Alabama, it's guaranteed playoff inclusion. I think it would be really interesting to see what the committee does if Alabama does win. Are you going to then have no SEC teams getting buys? Or does Alabama jump all the way up to 4? Or are you going to put someone, Ole Miss, there's no justification to move them up. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think the only way that it doesn't happen is if Indiana gets crushed.
Right.
Like I think if Indiana gets crushed, then you could see that. But I think but see, here's the rub. So you're going to have 3 Big Ten teams get buys. That's what the rankings call for. But what would be the reason to have Bama jump Oregon? Yeah, you have Bama. Exactly. Other than you just don't want 3 Big Ten teams to get buys. And so you're going to need some finagling. Do I think that they can jump them up to 4? Yeah, I think they could. I think if Texas Tech wins, they've got a bye. Ohio State has a bye. I think Indiana in a close game keeps a bye. So then it's okay. Do they jump Bama all the way up to 4? Yeah. Do they drop Georgia only down a spot? That's the other thing is because you know what I mean? Like, I don't think you can because you lost to Bama twice. I think you have to put Georgia behind Alabama if Alabama wins this game because they beat you twice and neither game was in Tuscaloosa. Like they beat you on your place and beat you on a neutral field in yours, Georgia. Like 30 minutes from where your campus is. You know what I mean? Like, I think you have to put Bama ahead. That's why I think ultimately they will jump Bama up to 4. I don't think it's a given though, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I think the fact that it would then result in 3 Big Ten teams being that high, I think that's where the problem would be. You're not going to jump Ole Miss up there. They didn't
No.
play for the SEC championship.
No.
So I could see Bama getting skyrocketed up if they win this game. I actually could. The more I talk it through, I think that's probably the most likely thing to happen.
I think the committee has to. Otherwise, I mean, to your point, there's so many. The committee for this 12-team playoff to survive, and I know we're not talking big picture yet, but for this 12-team playoff to survive, they need a bit of an inside straight this weekend in my mind. Like the group of 5 is already blowing this up. Duke could blow this up. The SEC runner-up getting dropped out because they lose in the championship game and bumped out for BYU. That's problematic. Or a brand like Notre Dame getting bumped out by BYU. That's problematic. There's a lot that's gone wrong from a overall, like, I love the 12-team playoff, let's keep it the way that it is perspective. I'm not saying that about me. I'm just saying if that's your perspective, you like things the way that they are, this has been a bad year with how things have broken. And I mean, we've seen chalk the last 3 weeks. It's been frustrating as a Notre Dame fan because we keep waiting for that, LSU over Oklahoma or Auburn over or Alabama. Keep waiting for that victory.
They were all close.
7. They were all close.
Yeah.
They were all close.
Yeah.
But we're going to see.
But you want that to remain. Here's the funny thing. We've been rooting for upsets the last month, but this weekend you're like, okay, no upsets this weekend.
Yeah. Go Georgia.
Here's the reason
Virginia,
I think you have to jump. Yeah, exactly. Here's the reason I think you have to bump Alabama up. You can't have 3 Big Ten teams who have a strength of schedule of 49, 73, and 43 getting a first round bye. Because if you do that, then basically what you're saying is we're going to reward you for not playing a tough schedule. Now, in Ohio State's defense, Ohio State didn't have what we all thought was going to be an easy schedule at the beginning of the year. I mean, Texas is the preseason number 1 team. We expect Michigan to be better. We expect that Penn State game to be another top 5 matchup this season. Washington was a very good win. It's not easy to go out there and win that game. Playing Illinois on the road was a tough game. I think they tried to schedule well in things they control. Ohio is usually a very good MAC team, team that's winning 9-10 games a year. It's just some teams on their schedule weren't as good as people thought they were going to be. If Penn State's normal Penn State, Ohio State's schedule looks very different. Right now. Right. Indiana did not try to schedule well. I'm more okay punishing Indiana because they played Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State out of conference. They did not try to schedule well. I give them no credit
out
for
of
that.
The Virginia matchup.
Right,
they
exactly.
Out of the matchup with Virginia. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, Oregon, Montana State, Oklahoma State, and Oregon State all being home games, that's not really a great attempt to play tough. Whereas what did Florida State do, or what did Alabama do to start their season? They started playing at Florida State, first game of the year. So I think you look at that. You look at Georgia. They already played Georgia Tech out of conference. I mean, that's kind of what they do every year. And so I give them a lot of credit for that one. They, the rest of their non-conference schedule wasn't great, but they already got Georgia Tech baked in to their non-conference schedule. That's an okay attempt at playing tough. That's a 9-3 Georgia Tech team that almost beat them last year. And Marshall tends to be usually a pretty good, G5 team most years. They weren't this year, but they usually tend to be pretty good, as Notre Dame found out a few years ago. So I think you if you're the committee, if Georgia winning just makes this so much easier for you. If you're the committee, you're like one more week of no upsets and just make it super easy for us. Because then it's Georgia locks in the 2 seed, Indiana gets a bye, Texas Tech gets a bye, BYU's out. Then you don't have to drop Bama from 9 to behind Miami. You can put Notre Dame in front of Bama. There's still that buffer. And UVA gets in, so the ACC is not going to cry about how dumb their league. I mean, how bad their leagues. I mean, how awful everything that they do is. And then you've only got one G5 team, because if there's upsets, you've got to decide: do we put a 7-5 Duke team in the playoff, or do we put James Madison in the playoff? What if James Madison loses, or do we now have to bump Notre Dame out for Miami and make ourselves look stupid for having Miami behind Notre Dame this entire time because we don't want the ACC to get shut out? It's going to be a very, very interesting weekend for the committee. But if Georgia handles business this weekend, I think it's made a little bit easier, in regard to at least the buys. I don't know if it necessarily makes it easier at the bottom because the Big 12 could shake that up. But I think if Georgia and Texas Tech win this weekend, that makes the committee's lives a lot easier. It does.
Agreed.
Yeah. Matchup wise, we talked a lot about the playoff impact. Matchup wise, this is a very intriguing matchup. And one of the surprises of the earlier game was the fact that, I mean, when we did our preview, Trevor talked about how, Bama doesn't even try to run the ball. And they didn't really try to run the ball against Georgia. Georgia ran the ball really well against Alabama, but Gunnar Stockton had a rough day. Well, coming down the stretch, Gunnar Stockton's been a lot better down the stretch until the game against Georgia Tech, which, by the way, is in the same stadium that they're going to be playing this game. Georgia's playing back-to-back games in Mercedes-Benz because Georgia Tech stupidly gave up its right to home games against Georgia forever so they could get money to play in a neutral field game in this matchup. I think it was terrible for Georgia Tech and just not good for the game, in my opinion. But you didn't play well against Georgia Tech. This game really, I mean, it's going to come down to two things, in my opinion. Can Georgia pressure Ty Simpson, which they did an okay job of in the first matchup, and can Gunnar Stockton make some plays? I think Georgia can run on Alabama. They ran on Alabama last time. I mean, they were taking Chauncey Bowens and Nate Frazier and just running them right down Alabama's throat, especially Chauncey Bowens. I mean, I think Nate Frazier only had like 4 or 5 carries that game, but like they were hammering them with Chauncey Bowens last game. I mean, just boom, boom, boom. I think they can do that again. However, you do have to take into account that I think that was Tim Keenan's first game back from being injured. It was that game. He's healthy-ish now. That's going to make them a little bit tougher. I just don't think you can only run on them and beat them. You're going to have Gunnar Stockton's going to have to throw better than he did in the last game. I do, and I think this is a tough matchup for them. But I also don't think, Andrew. I don't think Alabama's playing good football right now. I can't tell you. Last time that I think Alabama played a good game was probably Tennessee back in mid-October. They didn't look very good against South Carolina. They looked terrible against LSU. They didn't look very good against Oklahoma. They didn't look very good against Auburn. I mean, Auburn blew that game more than Alabama won it. I mean, just driving and the ball goes right through a wide open guy's hands and gets picked off. You get 2 long touchdowns called back by penalties. I mean, they gave that game to Bama. They got outgained by like 130, 140 yards, which is kind of what they did to Oklahoma. Bama has not been a very good-looking team this last month and a half. Can they get that back now against Georgia? I think Georgia's been playing really good football. The Georgia Tech game was kind of a bit of an anomaly for them the last 3 weeks. And they look great against Mississippi State. I mean, Charlotte, So that's where I'm at. I think that Georgia has the advantage of this matchup, but they're going to have to pressure Ty Simpson, and Gunnar Stockton's going to have to be good. That's going to be the key.
Yep, absolutely. I think that the Georgia Tech game, also an anomaly. I think Georgia realized early on that Georgia Tech couldn't beat them, in that the way that they would just control that game at the line of scrimmage. They're like, we don't need to score 30 points to win. We don't need to win 42-40 in 8 overtimes or whatever it was last year. Like, we'll win an ugly game. We're going to stay at number 3, and we'll go play for the SEC title. And let's just get out of the game with the win and do what we need to do. And I think for Georgia, it's all going to start at the line of scrimmage. They need to control the line of scrimmage and make Alabama one-dimensional. You talked about it. Alabama, they don't run the ball, only 109 yards per game rushing in SEC play, and Georgia's really good against the run, only giving up 100.3 yards per game against conference opponents. And they also run the ball well, and they've been committing to the run, and that's opening up the play action. Also, you can use Gunnar Stockton's legs off of that. Georgia also, to your point about Stockton, hit the explosive plays when they're there. Auburn hit explosive plays. Alabama's given up 31 plays of over 20 yards to SEC opponents. The interesting thing about Georgia is they have a negative turnover differential in conference play. And so they need to protect the football. And then they also are the least penalized team in the SEC, but in that game against Alabama, they had 52 more yards of penalties. So just be disciplined and don't hurt yourself, and let your, I think, superior talent shine through. On the Alabama side of the ball, I think for Alabama, it's all about efficiency on first down. Win first down, stay on the field, get 4 yards 60% of the time. In their last matchup, they were constantly in third and short. They were 13 of 19 on third down. In Georgia, in SEC play is allowing opponents to convert 43% of the third down conversions. You look at the last game that they played, Alabama had 35 minutes, 36 seconds time of possession. If Alabama can win first down, second and medium, now you can take some shots with Ty Simpson, third and short, stay on the field. Now you get this into a slugfest, which is how they beat Georgia in the past, and then force some turnovers.
Yeah, we're on the same page. The Gunner Stockton will be the key in this game. And look, something Trevor and I have talked about. When you can pressure Ty Simpson, he gets that look in his eyes. Andrew, he gets that I don't know what to do look in his eyes.
Yep.
We saw that against Oklahoma. We saw that against, I mean, there was even at times against Georgia. We definitely saw that against Florida State.
Auburn.
Saw it against Auburn.
Yeah.
And you've got to make him uncomfortable.
Yep.
Absolutely have to make him uncomfortable. And if you're Alabama, if you can protect Ty Simpson, I think that Georgia's secondary is it's better than it was last year in coverage at corner. I still think that's an area where you can have, when you have receivers like Jeremy Bernard and you have receivers like Ryan Williams and Isaiah Horton finally getting healthy and rounding into form has been a huge boost for them. He was money for them. Although his first touchdown reception was a clear push-off, by the way. I mean, but getting him back has been huge because he gives them that big-bodied 6'4 plus kind of red zone chain-moving weapon that they need. But I do think they're going to have to at least try to have some semblance of balance. They're not going to run for 200 yards on Georgia. I don't think they care about running for 200 yards, but they ran for $117 in this game last time. I mean, for Kalen DeBoer's offense, that's like
it's enough
balance. You know what I mean? For them, that's balance. You're going to have to do something like that to keep some of the pressure off Ty Simpson. You can't put this game. You can't say, hey, Ty, go win it for us. Just like Georgia can't do that with Gunner Stockton. Don't say, hey, Gunner, let's go out there and throw the ball 40 times. You got to win this for us. No, we're going to run the ball. We're going to give you some chance to take some shots. You got to make some plays with your legs. Both quarterbacks make plays with their legs. This is Gunner Stockton's chance to say, hey, look, I'm that guy, you know, and we're going to get this thing turned around. I like Georgia in this game. I think the matchups are comparable. I think Georgia's playing better ball down the stretch. And I think Georgia's going to, you talked about earlier, the disrespect card. I think I'll be shocked if Georgia hasn't been playing that all week. Nobody thinks we can beat them. We're one. And Kirby's going to be in it a little bit this week. I really do believe that. Now, that may not mean a hill of beans. You know, I'm sure they were fired up to play the game earlier in the year because if they got beat by them last year. But sometimes the team just has your number. They need a win against Bama to kind of stem the tide of, you know, no pun intended, of what Bama's doing to them, you know, because like you said, I mean, last two SEC championship games against Bama, they lost, right? They lost in
knocked out of the playoff
one, and they lost in 2023 to your point, and it knocked them out of the playoffs. So you're hoping for a little bit of payback here if you're Georgia, and I do think Georgia is the better team. Let's do predictions, Andrew. What say you about this game?
Yeah,
Who you got winning?
I agree with you. I got Georgia as well. Close, low scoring, 20-17. I just think that these teams are Georgia's the better team, but diving into some of the advanced analytics, the stats, they're not too far apart. Georgia's actually a little bit lower in some of the analytics than I thought they would be. And Alabama can do some things like they did last game to extend drives. If they can just, like you were saying, be balanced, win first down, get yourself into second and medium, get yourself into third and short, stay on the field. Don't let Georgia just be patient and run the ball on you. Like, put some game pressure on them. What I think the difference in the game, though, and there's a reason I picked this by a field goal, is special teams. I think special teams are a big factor in this game because it's the one analytic that these teams are not close in. Georgia is the 8th ranked team in special teams efficiency. Alabama is 97th. If you look at the field goal kicking, Peyton Woodring 15 of 16 on the year. Connor Talty is 13 of 20. He missed a field goal in that game against Georgia. Special teams.
Which is why it was so stupid of Frank Beamer to let Alabama score a touchdown. Make that kid beat you with the kick.
Yeah. Yep.
That was one of the dumbest coaches' decisions I've ever seen. Bama's been having kicking problems since Saban arrived. I mean, remember the LSU game in 2011? The kick six? They've never been good at kicking field goals. And you're going to let them score and not give them what would have been like a high 30, low 40-yard field goal for a kid who's missed 10 kicks? It's like Notre Dame's like, yeah, we're good, bad at special teams, and Alabama's like, hold my beer. We'll show you what bad special teams look like. You know what I mean? You make that kid kick it. Kirby Smart won't make that kind of dumb decision. He made his one lifetime dumb special teams decision against Alabama in the 2018 SEC championship. Remember the fake punt when Bama was in punt safe, and they still ran a fake punt with Justin Fields on the
very Pat Narduzzi-esque.
Yes. And then Saban said, hold my beer as well. And they ran that fake field goal against Clemson where they flipped it to the kicker and he ran right at Christian Wilkins. That wasn't going to work. So, but Kirby's learned some things from Marcus Freeman. He stole that play that Notre Dame did, which I'm all about. I love that. I don't. Yeah. But I think that special teams thing right there, when you can't run the ball and you don't play good special teams, you're not going to be a dominant team. Bama's not a dominant team. And I think that's going to hurt them a lot more in this game than it did in September. I really do. I think Gunnar Stockton is a lot more comfortable as the leader of this team now than he was on September 27th. And I think that's going to be the biggest difference in this game for me. And what you said, 2017, we're very close. I have 27-24. I just have one more touchdown for each team. We're very close. So I think it's going to be a tight game, back and forth game, very close game. I think Georgia will be the better team in this game. If the game's not close, I think it'll be more so Georgia. We'll know the answer to whether or not this is going to be a close game or a 7 to 14 point Georgia win by the end of the first quarter.
Yes.
Because we're going to see what's happening in the trenches on both sides of the ball. If Georgia's running it down Alabama's throat and they're getting after Ty Simpson, it's going to be a long day. If not, if Bama's having, they're gashing a couple runs, they're protecting Ty Simpson, Georgia's going 3-4 yards a pop in the run game, then it's like, okay, Bama's here. They came to play. This is going to be a battle. If that happens, then I see your score being what it's ultimately going to be. If Georgia has a little bit of early success, then I think it'll be more of like a 24 to 27 to 30 type of outcome for them against Bama. But this is a good Bama defense. It's not an elite Bama defense, but it's a very good Bama defense. And I don't think this is a high-octane Georgia offense. So I do view it being a 20 to 20-something game, but I think Georgia's the better team in this game. So I got 27-24. You have 20 to 17, right?
Yep.
All right, next game, Andrew. We're going to go to the Big Ten. And we've got a battle of unbeatens. The one game where there's no concern about anybody being knocked out of the playoffs. The winner and loser of this game are going to be in. FanDuel has this game, Andrew, as Ohio State as a 4.5-point favorite. And I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing how this game plays out. And the over-under in this game is 47.5. It's going to be set Saturday night, 8 o'clock in Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. The game will be on Fox, obviously. And this is a battle between two teams who are basically playing for the pride of the conference championship. That's really what's on the line here. I think both teams probably get a bye, barring a blowout. I think that you want what's else at stake in this game is the number one seed, the clearer path. I think the number one seed has a lot more advantages this year than it did last year. Oregon, unfortunately, was in a weird situation where they were the 1 seed, but they had to play the 6 seed in round 2 was it the 7? Ohio State ended up being 6th, right? But they got bumped down to 8th because two teams jumped ahead.
Tennessee was
BYU,
9.
Arizona State, right? Tennessee was 9, Indiana was 10, and then you had SMU was 11, and then Clemson was 12.
Correct.
So you had to play the 6th best team in the country, even though they were 8th in the ranking, as opposed to playing the winner of the Indiana-Boise State game. Oregon's postseason looks a whole lot different if last year's playoff rankings looked like this year's playoff rankings. As far as it's just the 12 best. And if the at-larges get in, they get in at 11 and 12 if they're outside the rankings. Not you were 13th and now you jump up to 4. So it is more of an advantage for the number 1 seed this year than it was last year. Now, depending on who the 8-9 game is, it's like if it's Oklahoma, Notre Dame, you may not view that as much of an advantage. And you're like, go Sooners because Boomer Sooner, baby, if you're Ohio State. Not that they can't beat Notre Dame. They've beat Notre Dame 3 games in a row, but that offense is not – I'm going to be shocked if they get past midfield against Ohio State if Oklahoma has to play them, much less score. And so it's not so much like I don't want to play Notre Dame. It's more like I want that defense to play against that offense. Ohio State's like first 1 to 10 wins. You know what I mean? Like if you're Ohio State, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but that's what's at stake in this game. It really comes down to that. It's who's going to get the number 1 seed, who's going to get that clean path to a championship. I think that's what's it. For Ohio State, it's, hey, we haven't won a Big Ten championship in a while. I mean, people forget that. Ohio State hasn't won a Big Ten championship in a while. Actually, let me look this up. It's been let me look up Ryan Day. Has it been since 2019 or 2020? 2020 since they've won the Big Ten championship? Yeah, 2020 is the last time Ohio State won the Big Ten championship. They beat Northwestern in the COVID year. So they won it his first 2 years, but in 21, they didn't play for the Big Ten championship. And 22 and 23 was it Michigan both years?
I think so.
They beat them in the head-to-head. So
yeah,
it's been a very interesting ride. Let's just say that. It's been a very interesting ride. Now you got the national championship last year. You beat Michigan. You got that monkey off your back. Now it's time to claim the Big Ten championship. If you're Curt Cignetti, this is the ultimate, this is to me the pinnacle for you. Yes, if you make a run in the playoffs, that's great, but this is the first mountain you've got to climb. Can you beat Ohio State, right? And then win the Big Ten championship. That's what's at stake for you. This is the final. We are that program. Because there's still some people that say, yeah, you're doing great. Beating Oregon was nice, but you didn't play anybody else all year. Penn State stunk. And you say, well, Ohio State kind of had a comparable schedule. Yeah, but they're Ohio State. They're the defending national champions. They've done this. They whooped you last year. I think this is the game where Indiana says, enough with this we're a great story stuff. We are an elite team. And you're going to have to beat a team like Ohio State to truly prove that you're that program. So to me, when I look at what's at stake this weekend, they're both playoff teams. The number 1 seed is there, but I think there's more to it than that. I think Ryan Day wants to get the Big Ten title game off his back. Say, look, I won a natty. I won the Big Ten. I beat Michigan. Get off my back about it. You know what I mean? Let's just go roll now. And then, of course, if you're Indiana, it's like this is the thing that announces you. This is you kicking down the door and saying, we are an elite team, not just a really, really good team that beats up on bad teams. We're an elite team. And I'm not saying I believe that about Indiana. I'm saying that's the narrative.
Right.
This is the thing where you start getting into the living rooms of top 100 players saying, no, yeah, you come here. We're going to pay you, and we can beat Ohio State. I think that's what's at stake for these two teams.
I see it the same way, and I think there's actually more for Indiana in this game. Sure, Ohio State, like you said, Big Ten title, extend the nation's longest winning streak, take the number 1 seed. I'm interested to see, does Ohio State play more relaxed after beating Michigan and get to even another level than they've been already this year? They're dominant. Their stats are incredible. But Indiana, the analytics love Indiana. Indiana's stats are incredible, but all that was true last year. And then in the 2 biggest games that Indiana had last year, they were dominated by Ohio State. Outside of 2 drives, they had 8 yards of offense the rest of the game. And then they were dominated by Notre Dame in a game that was nowhere near as close as the final score ended up being. And you said, yes, winning at Oregon, that's tough to do. It's tough to win at Oregon, but you survived an average Penn State team. You survived an average Iowa team in Iowa City. You're still like a program that canceled.
It was 10-7 at halftime against Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's 10-7 halftime against Wisconsin. You're still a program, too, if you want to be one of the big boys, and Cignetti wants to be one of the big boys, and you canceled a home-and-home with Virginia and bought out of it. And sure, Virginia winds up being a pretty good team this year, but that was a Virginia team that went 4-8 or 5-7 last year, and you're buying out of that to go play Kennesaw State. And so this is Indiana in addition to having the same goals as Ohio State, number 1 overall seed by conference championship, they can validate themselves as, hey, no, we're a true contender here. And because there's, like you said, there's a feeling that they still haven't quite arrived yet. And so I think both teams will come into this game motivated, ready to play. I think Indiana, playing in Indianapolis, it's, they're going to have a great crowd. Ohio State always travels well. It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun game.
It is. Oh, yes, it is. I'm very much looking forward to this. I love this matchup. I do. I think this is two great teams. There's a lot of people that, like, I've got Indiana fans losing their minds on Twitter because they still don't know how to handle success. And Ohio State fans too. I made a tweet that said, I don't think Ryan Day and Curt Cignetti should be finalists for the Coach of the Year award. Like, they're doing a great job, but just because you're doing a great job on the best team in the country doesn't mean you did the best job. Going 12-0 at Ohio State against that schedule, going 12-0 at Indiana against that schedule, to me, is not as impressive as Clark Lee going 10-2 at Vanderbilt, or Tony Elliott especially going 10-2 at Virginia, or Joe McGuire going 11-1. But like, they're still great jobs, right? I mean, it's like Indiana fans are in this universe of like, oh, no one thought we were going to be good. I had Indiana as the number 9 team in the country preseason. And honestly, if Penn State was as good as we all thought they were going to be, I think that's where Indiana's ranked right now. I think Penn State would have beat them. I mean, they barely beat Penn State without Drew Aller and James Franklin and a lot of the guys that we thought they were going to be. But that's still 11-1. That's still a great coaching job by Curt Cignetti. I think they caught some breaks this year. But I'm not one of those people that still likes to poo-poo this Indiana team. This is a legit football team. I think Fernando Mendoza gives them a much more competent quarterback against the top teams. That's what killed them last year. Curtis Rourke did a great job last year. He ran that offense tremendously. But when they played against like real defenses, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and to a degree Michigan, Indiana couldn't score. They scored, 15 points against Ohio State? One of their scores was late in the game.
15, and it was late.
They scored
opening drive and then their last drive.
They scored 15 points against Michigan, or 20 points against Michigan. And all of that came in the first half. They didn't do anything in the second half of the game. They scored 17 points against Notre Dame. The last 14 points of that game were garbage touchdowns where you got like back-to-back onside kicks, because the game was over. You were down 27-3. And so, again, Archer, it's not about he didn't do a great job. So my whole point is he did a great job. You go undefeated, he did a great job. But just because you did a great job on the number 1 team in the country doesn't mean you should be the Coach of the Year, because otherwise Nick Saban should have won it every year. The point is, it's like Indiana fans losing their minds and a couple Ohio State fans losing their minds because I don't have their coach on it. It's like, it's okay to say, hey, but Indiana fans, I kind of get it, because I do think they feel still a little disrespected. And I get that. I don't think people are giving this Indiana team enough credit. This is a really good football team. And I think Mendoza gives them a guy that could do enough. I don't think he should be the Heisman winner. I don't think he should be a Heisman finalist. He's the productive quarterback on the number 2 team in the country. There are 4, 5, 6 better quarterbacks in the country than him. That's just how the Heisman goes. But he gives you a chance against these teams to make enough plays to win the game. I think they're better at receiver this year. I think they're better at running back this year. I think their offensive line is better this year. And the thing that separates Indiana from a lot of the other teams that are pretenders, that are good teams but not title contending teams, is Indiana is legit in the front 7 on defense. Legit. Their D-line, led by Mikael Kamara, is legit. Aiden Fisher in that linebacking core is legit. This is a really good front 7, and I expect this to be a hard-fought, low-scoring game. Indiana this year, athletically and in the trenches, can match up better against Ohio State than they did last year. Is it good enough to win? I'll tell you in a minute what my score prediction is, but no, I don't think it's good enough to win. I think they're going to have to force some mistakes by Julian Sain, and that's where it could get interesting, is you have a veteran quarterback against a redshirt freshman. I thought Julian Sain had that big turnover against Michigan last week early on and settled in real nicely, but you were never threatened after the first quarter. What if Indiana keeps scoring with you? That could be a matchup to watch, but I haven't seen anything from Julian Sain that tells me he's going to not handle the moment well. He seems like a pretty mature kid in that regard. But I think the difference is I think this Ohio State or this Indiana team can hang with Ohio State in the trenches the way last year's team couldn't. Not that Ohio State's not as good there. It's just that Indiana's better there is the way I look at it. And I think Omar Cooper's a very different animal at wide receiver than what they had last year complimenting Garrett Surratt. Now, I know Omar was part of that. He has physically matured a lot this year, and his game has matured. He was a good player last year. He's a really good player this year. And then the Becker kid stepping up. Like, there's a lot of weapons there. You're going to need a lot of weapons. You can't just have one great receiver going against Ohio State because they will take that dude out. You really can't have two really good receivers. You need a third and a fourth weapon. And I think Indiana has that. Can they protect Fernando Mendoza? That's the big question that I have in this game. And then on the other side of the ball with Ohio State is what really helped them last week is when the run game got going, they were Michigan had no answers. Can they get the run game going against Indiana? This is a whole, with all due respect to Michigan, who's a good football team, this is a whole different animal defensively in this game. I mean, they gave up 218 yards in the opener to Old Dominion. Since that game, they've had allowed one game of over 100 yards, and that was 117 yards to Penn State. That was also the only game where a team averaged over 3.52 yards per carry, and they were 3.55. Only three teams all year, Michigan State, UCLA, and Penn State, averaged over 3 yards a carry since the Old Dominion game on this defense. And again, they don't play a lot of juggernauts, but they held Oregon to 81 yards on 30 carries. They held Iowa to 92 yards on 31 carries. They held Illinois, who's a solid running team, to 2 yards on 20 carries. This is a different animal than what Ohio State went up against last year.
Yeah, those stats are not inflated by playing a bunch of group of 5 teams in the non-conference. Just like you're saying, rush yards per game, 67.2 is their average against Big Ten opponents. So physical in the trenches, great team. And then they run the ball as well. They have a better rushing attack than they had last year. They're averaging over 200 yards a game on the ground against Big Ten opponents. So it's a good Indiana team. I think like you're saying, they got to protect Fernando Mendoza. They've allowed 14 sacks in conference play. Ohio State's good at getting after the quarterback. And then they need to force turnovers. Indiana has a plus 13 turnover margin in Big Ten play. Ohio State's plus 3. But Indiana's lived off forcing turnovers, get short fields, build some momentum. Indiana, like you're saying, they can stress Ohio State because Indiana is not going to kick a field goal when you give them 30 yards to go, like Michigan did. Michigan was never going to be able to give Ohio State enough stress. Ohio State could be patient. After saying through the early interception, they were allowed him to settle into the game. Bo Jackson had a great game as well. Ohio State's been fine running the ball against Big Ten opponents, 165 yards a game. The one thing for Indiana, I think they need to handle an early Ohio State punch. And how they handle an early Ohio State just beat Michigan. They're going to come in and they're going to try to overwhelm them with their talent, with their speed, with their physicality. Indiana just played Purdue. The game is going to be played at a different speed. If Indiana can handle that early punch, I think they can do some things to give Ohio State some problems and make it a game in the fourth quarter where it wasn't last year.
Let's talk predictions here. I think the matchup that's been nailed. Let's talk who we think is going to win and how we see the game being played. I'll let you start.
Yeah, close game. I have Ohio State 27, Indiana 20. So I think a close game, a little bit on the lower scoring side. I think it comes down to a couple things. Number one, Ohio State superior athletes. And even though Indiana has made strides in their depth, especially in the front seven and on the offensive line, Ohio State just has superior depth. I mean, when you have a top 5 recruiting class year in and year out, even though Cignetti's been great in the transfer portal, Indiana doesn't have the depth that Ohio State does. Ohio State is also very good at protecting Julian Sayin. They've only allowed 5 sacks versus Big Ten opponents. He had all day to throw against Michigan, and Michigan prides themselves on getting after the quarterback. That manifests itself in Ohio State converting almost 60% of third downs against their conference opponents. Indiana's pretty good on third down defense. And I think if Ohio State stays patient with the running game, it's going to keep Indiana honest and allow Ohio State to attack downfield with Jeremiah Smith, with Carnell Tate, Max Clare at tight end, Brandon Innes working the slots. And I think that in the secondary, Indiana likes to attack vertically. And Fernando Mendoza is better than Curtis Rourke was last year, but Rourke against Ohio State was 8 for 18. They take away the back shoulder fade. You're not going to, I mean, Surratt and Cooper are good receivers, but you're not just going to run by Ohio State's secondary. And you have Caleb Downs in the middle of the field.
Is really long. He's hard to get those back shoulders. He
exactly.
Really is hard.
Exactly. So I think that Indiana will be able to keep this close. For them, it comes down to, can they find the same level of explosiveness that they've had against other Big Ten opponents? 51 plays of 20-plus yards. And like I said, plus 13 turnover margin. So if they can turn the ball over, if they can be explosive and not have to go on 8, 10, 12-play drives to score, then maybe they can get this game into the 30s. But I just think that there's too much for Ohio State. And that doesn't take anything away from Indiana. Ohio State's been the number one team in the country all season. Losing by a touchdown in a game that's going to be competitive into the fourth quarter, they're going to stay with a bye. They'll go down maybe to the 4 seed. And then, you still have a good path from there.
If they keep it competitive, they will keep a bye and should. I mean, if you play the number one team in the country,
ahead of them, they beat Oregon.
Right. And like, if you play the number one team in the country, who's undefeated, defending national champs, you beat number 5. Unless you get blown out, you're going to get a bye, and that's what Indiana's playing for. So that I think this game is to me, this is what it comes down to. I think Indiana can be more competitive in the trenches against Ohio State this year. I think that's going to keep this game a little bit more competitive. The thing about Indiana last year is their defense was actually pretty good against Ohio State last year. Like, everybody looks at the final score and they're like, they gave up 38 points to Ohio State. They only gave up 316 yards of offense.
Yep. Special teams.
Ohio State had they had a punt return for a touchdown. They had a turnover that Ohio State had a touchdown drive of less than 10 yards. Like, they did pretty good. Now, this Ohio State offense is playing better than last year's Ohio State offense was in the regular season. I mean, we've talked about this in our show before, Andrew, where Ohio State's offense, everybody remembers what they did in the playoffs. They forget what they did from like Nebraska or Penn State on last year. They were very mediocre offense. They woke up in the postseason. This Ohio State offense is playing better in the regular season than that one was, but it's not a juggernaut offensive football team. Now, is Brian Hartline going to be the OC this weekend? How distracted is he going to be from getting the head coaching job? I don't know that matters a whole lot because Ryan Day, I believe, is still pretty involved in this process. But it's going to come down to, can Ohio State run the ball enough to keep Indiana honest, to then allow Julian Sain to hit some of those big shots downfield to Cardinal Tate and to obviously Jeremiah Smith. The Ohio State tight ends, to me, are the wild card in this game. And if they can perform in some big moments, right? Max Clare's had 41 catches for 420 yards. Will Kazmarik's had 9 catches for 120 yards. Jelani Thurman's had 7 for 84 yards. So you're talking about a position group where you've got over 50 catches on the season. You've got over 500-600 yards in the season. They haven't been like the high volume producers, but they're clutch. They need to be clutch in this game because Indiana's going to have a lot of resources towards keeping the big receivers from making plays. You're going to need Max Clare, Jelani Thurman, Will Kazmarik to make some plays on top of being able to do enough in the run game to keep Indiana honest. I think that's going to be the key for Ohio State. For Indiana, you're going to have to hit some big plays. You're not methodically going to just go down the field drive after drive. You're going to need your defense to give you a short field or two, and you're going to have to hit some big plays. That's going to be the key. The third down battle in this game is going to be fascinating. And you brought that up, and I love that you brought that up. Ohio State has the number 1 third down offense in the country and the number 3 third down defense in the country. Indiana has the number 2 third down offense in the country and the number 4 third down defense in the country. That is going to be a big part of this game because I don't think either of them are going to be great on third down because the defenses, I think, are going to carry the day a little bit. but who makes the most clutch third downs? And that's where I bring up the tight ends into this conversation, where I think they're going to be the ones that could make some of those clutch plays, that have that big play down the field, that they're putting all their attention here. Ohio State's going to need that to win this game, and they're going to have to get pressure up front. They're going to have to win the battle in the trenches. If Indiana gets its run game going, they are hard to beat. Very hard to beat. If you can shut that run game down, they are very vulnerable. It's like they go as their run game goes. I really believe that about this football team. You look at what they did against Iowa, 104 yards rushing, close competitive football game. Wisconsin, they struggled in that game. What? 83 rushing yards. Penn State struggled in that game on offense, 108 rushing yards. Like the Oregon game, they struggled early in that game, or their defense really won them that game.
Yeah, it's a big defensive score, that pick six.
Yes.
Huge play.
Yes, but you look at some of the other big games. Maryland, 367 rushing yards. Illinois, 312 rushing yards. UCLA, 262. Maryland, Purdue, 355. When this team runs the football effectively, they're very hard to beat. When they struggle to run the football, they're very stoppable. That's going to be the key for Ohio State. Can you slow down the run game? If you do, you're going to be able to win this football game. And I think that's ultimately going to be the reason Ohio State wins. Oh, I think you can make a case that Indiana's O-line coach, Bob Bostad, is the best O-line coach in college football right now. He's certainly in the conversation because they're pumping out big-time performances with offensive linemen that are okay, but not high-level NFL players like Notre Dame has, like Ohio State has, like other teams have. They just play hard, and they're very well coached. The problem is against Ohio State, you're going up against dudes that are going to be high-level NFL players. That's going to be the key. But Ohio State has not really been got in the run game this year. I mean, Michigan ran for 100 yards last week. It's the first time Ohio State gave up 100 yards since the opener against Texas. And what, 40 of that came on one carry in the first quarter by Jordan Marshall? You know what I mean? Like, this has been a filthy run defense all season. What we don't know is are they really that good? They're really good, but are they that good? Or is it that you've played a schedule of a bunch of teams that can't run a football? Like that's what we're going to find out. But if Ohio State's run defense plays in this game like it has all year, I don't think Indiana can beat them. I just don't think it's going to be a blowout because I don't know that this Ohio State offense can score 30, 40 points against this Indiana defense. This is a really good defense. So I think it's going to be a great game. I got it 24-20 Buckeyes. I think this is going to be, if you like defensive football, this is going to be your game. I really
and good
think so.
defenses, not bad offenses. Like a great,
Right.
like just good on both sides of the ball.
Yes. These are two big-time defenses against two good offenses. That's what I think. Neither of these offenses are elite. Indiana puts up a ton of points. I think they beat up on a lot of bad teams.
Yeah, it's their style.
Right. That doesn't make them not good. It's just like they needed a late touchdown to get to 20 against Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State, again, very good offense, but not an elite offense. I think both of these defenses are elite. I do. I think these are two of the best defenses in college football.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. Like, to your point, neither of these teams have bad offenses. I just think they have elite defenses. So whose offense can make the most plays? At the end of the day, I'm going with the team who has the best players. And it doesn't always have to be schemed up well for Cardinal Tate to make a big play.
Yep.
Or Jeremiah Smith. Sometimes like, why did you throw to double coverage, Julian? Oh, hey, great catch, Jeremiah. Nice job. You know what I mean? It's like, and Julian Saints played into that. He knows, like, I don't have to always make the perfect read. Number 4 is one-on-one. I'm throwing it to him. That's smart.
We saw it on 4th down against Notre Dame in the championship, on 4th down against Michigan when the game was still in doubt. It's like, all right, throw it to number 4 in a go ball. You get single coverage. Sure, it's 4th and 2. Take the shot. Sometimes
because
it's that
here's
easy.
The thing. Like, Ohio State doesn't have an elite offense this year. But I think that they're okay with that this year. Because I think their thing is like, look, what we're not going to do is we're not going to put our young quarterback in a situation where he's got to put the game on his shoulders and lead us to a victory We don't want him making bad mistakes. We don't want him turning the ball over. And now all of a sudden this team has short fields. You can't get to 20 on us. All we got to do is get to 20.
Right.
And we're going to win. Because you know how many teams have scored 20 points against Ohio State this year?
Yeah.
You know,
Texas got 7, right?
Do you know how many teams have gotten to 17 points against Ohio State this year?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So why throw the ball all over the field, run the risk of turnovers that give teams short fields? They can't score on you. So just do what you do. I think they will have to hit a couple plays in this game, though. I don't think they can just ground and pound Indiana into oblivion. They're not good enough running the football. They're going to have to need Julian to make 3-4 big throws in this game. By big, it could be down the field or it could be a crucial 3rd and 6, crucial 3rd and 5. They're going to need him to make 4 or 5 of those throws. And if he can, I think they win this football game. If he can't, that's what gives Indiana a chance. No, you're good.
I was going to say their situational play calling was in design was exceptional against Michigan. The way that they would use that bunch formation, free guys across the middle on the goal line and 3rd and short, 3rd and medium. I was drawing a lot of their plays up. Like we got to do that next year. Great 3rd and short.
Well schemed offensively.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah, they are.
They absolutely are. Mike Shanahan has done a tremendous job there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about it. So I went 24-20. You went
27-20.
27-20. So we're very close on that one.
Very close on that one. We've been very.
So we have the
close,
Buckeyes winning, getting the number 1 seed.
Yep.
I have Indiana losing and dropping to 4.
They dropped to 4. I have Georgia winning. Georgia goes to 2. Texas Tech slides up to 3.
Yep. Same. All right. We've got the final on this wonderful, fun preview here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel. We have the ACC championship, the most intriguing of all the championships because of what's at stake. FanDuel in this game has the spread at Virginia is a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under 57.5. Of all the games we've previewed, all the games so far, the over-under's under 50, except for this one, because these are not great defenses, but both of these offenses can score. And I think that they're predicting that this is going to be even more high scoring than the game we saw last time. The game will be held at Bank of America Stadium on Saturday night at 8 o'clock Eastern on ABC. As I mentioned, the Cavaliers are a 3.5-point favorite in this game. This is a rematch, and this is a very recent rematch. This game was played at Duke on November 15th, a game that Virginia won 34-17. I don't love rematches. I think it's hard to beat a team twice. I've always said that, but especially when you've played a team this recently. Both teams have a pretty long injury list in this game, but getting Chandler Morris back is obviously going to be big. Virginia was pretty dominant in that game. Duke scored 14 points in the fourth quarter. They scored 14 of the last 17 points of the game. It was 31-3 going into the fourth quarter. This was not an overly competitive game, and Duke needed a pick six to even make it 31-17, and then Virginia went down and got a field goal on the ensuing drive. Wasn't overly competitive. Duke is a very intriguing team, and when you talk about what's on the line, we'll dive into the matchup here in a second, but what's on the line for Virginia, you win and you're in the college football playoffs. Simple as that. I mean, you're ranked 17th going into this game. You will be the fourth highest ranked conference champion. And what an absolutely brilliant, tremendous story that would be. I mean, this is Tony Elliott's chance to in my opinion, prove that like this is the best coaching job that was done in college football this year. Just a tremendous job by Tony Elliott. And we said even last year and the year before, like Virginia kids play hard for him. They're just not that good. And especially at quarterback. Well, they got a good quarterback this year and the team completely turned around. Just a tremendous story. For Duke, they're not winning, you're in. If Duke wins, like if Virginia wins, so many things become a little clearer. I don't think there's this need to have to arbitrarily argue to put Miami in if you don't think they belong in because there's no ACC team. My concern, looking this strictly from a Notre Dame fan, and we'll dive into the matchup here in a second, if Duke wins, does the committee feel compelled to put an ACC team in? Well, if they do, there's two ways they can do it. One is to just BYU loses, drop Notre Dame. And Alabama wins, you drop Notre Dame behind Miami, and Miami's in. That's going to look real bad when you consider that after all 12 games are played, you felt Notre Dame was better. Then a bunch of games get played that have nothing to do with Notre Dame at all, and you put Miami in. I don't think the committee's going to do that, but I am worried that they do that. Will they really want to leave the ACC completely out? And my answer is, well, yeah, don't have a 5-loss team in your conference championship game, and you might be okay. But that is a bit of a concern of mine. The other thing you could do is if James Madison loses, which I'm not banking on, because if you look at FanDuel, James Madison's a 23.5-point favorite over Troy. If for some reason they lose, then you just say, okay, you jump Duke up to 25 and put them in. I don't know that they're going to do that. I don't. So it's going to be very fascinating looking at this game as far as what happens if Duke wins. If you're everyone that's not a Duke fan, I think right now the only two teams in America that are rooting for Duke to win this game is Duke fans and Miami fans. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Virginia has a lot of pressure on them. Number one, like you said, you blew out this team 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I said at the beginning, the legitimacy of the ACC is on the line as a football conference. Virginia can right a lot of the wrongs to this point by having a team. Okay, our conference champion went 11-2, and they lost one game that was an actual conference game. Completed dramatic turnaround under Tony Elliott, like you talked about. And, this has been a solid football team. These guys play hard. They play good situational football. That's Virginia. They 50% third down conversions, and they're allowing just 31% against ACC opponents. So pretty good against the run, pretty good against the pass. Not a great defense, but they play hard. One thing that they do pretty well is they get after the passer, 25 sacks in conference play. And their efficiency numbers are okay across the board. They're not college football playoff team okay, but they're a pretty good team. On the Duke side, I don't think Duke's a very good football team. I think Duke does a couple things well.
They can score.
They can score, and that's about it. They're explosive, and it's chaos ball with them. Their turnover margin in conference play is plus 16, and they have 42 plays of over 20 yards. It's all chaos ball. They're 110th in defensive efficiency. They are terrible against the pass. 286 yards per game against ACC opponents against the pass, a conference that doesn't have a ton of great quarterbacks. And, it would be so typical of the ACC, though, for Duke to just win this game.
Yep.
Because that's what the ACC has been all season, even in past seasons. It's always just chaotic. They cannibalize each other. And Duke is the epitome of just a chaos ball type of team.
Yeah.
And, you talked about it with Duke. They're going to know tonight, do they have a shot? If Troy were to somehow upset James Madison, then it's like, all right, you got a shot.
If James Madison wins, Duke is out.
Yeah, they're out.
They have no shot to get in. So, but the thing is, there's less pressure on Duke, though, too.
Yeah,
no one thinks that they're going to win. They have nothing to lose. Go play ball. Virginia's got all the pressure on them because you're the one that has a chance to go earn a playoff berth. This stat is to me, explains Duke to a T. Duke is 20th in college football this year amongst all teams with 66 plays of 20 yards or more. Just very good. That's very good. Impressive. It shows the big play nature of their football team.
And they did it against the ACC too.
Yes.
Against their conference.
Duke is 130th in the country with 66 plays allowed of 20 yards or more. So they literally have given up the same amount of plays. They're one of the 20 best teams in the country in big plays on offense, but they are also one of the worst teams in the country in giving that up. And I think that ultimately is the thing that Virginia's going to have to take care of. And Virginia's been a pretty good big play offense this year in some of their bigger games. I mean, that's really what that kept them in the NC State game, is they ripped off a couple big runs on fourth down. They're not a team that makes their living needing to go for 20, 30 yards a pop, though. They're a much more efficient team on offense, and Virginia has a much better defense. I think that's been a very underrated part of Virginia's success this year is their defense has been solid. When I mean solid, I'm talking about like for an ACC team. There's not a lot of great defenses in the ACC outside of Miami. I mean, they're obviously a pretty good defense this season. I mean, do you want to argue that Clemson, SMU? I mean, literally, there's one defense giving up less than 20 points a game in the ACC. One, and that's Miami. Duke's number 2 though at 20 points a game. I mean, so like they have been good this season. Now that number needs an asterisk by it because they gave up over 30 points to NC State, but that didn't count as the conference game, which is still the most ACC thing ever. Your one-loss conference opponent lost twice to teams in your league. It's the dumbest thing ever. It really is. You should not be allowed to schedule a team in your league for a non-conference game unless your conference decides they don't want to have you play your normal rival. Like if the AC said, okay, UVA and Virginia Tech, you're not on the ACC slate this year. Fine. We're going to still play each other. That I'd be okay with. Outside of that, that's absolutely ridiculous. Now, I think part of that was because of what Indiana did, wasn't it?
Yeah, Indiana bought it out. They needed a game.
Right.
But
so
it's
the
still ACC
ridiculous.
Couldn't work that into the schedule. And
right.
It's absurd.
So dumb.
Absurd.
So anyway, so you look at the matchup, it really comes down to can Duke's offense perform better than they did in the last matchup? That's really what it comes down to. And for people asking why would Miami fans be rooting for Duke, I explained that like 10 minutes ago. If Duke wins, there's a chance the committee may feel compelled to put an ACC team in, and the easiest thing to do is to put Miami in over Notre Dame. I don't think that they will do that, but it's definitely something that I would be a little nervous about going into Sunday. But anyway, back to the matchup. Virginia's defense is really what won them the game against Duke the last time they played. Their defense completely shut Duke down. Now, their offense performed very well. They had 540 yards of offense, 7.0 yards per play, but they held Duke to 255 yards and only 42 rushing yards. Like they completely shut Duke's offense down. And Duke's a team that runs the ball okay, but they're definitely a team that likes to throw the ball this season. Darian Mensah, the transfer they got from Tulane, passed for 3,450 yards this season, 28 touchdowns and 4 interceptions on the season. And against Virginia, he only completed 51.4% of his passes. It's only one of 2 games all year that he was less than 50% or less than 60%. The other one being at Tulane. He averaged 6.1 yards per play, 1 touchdown, no picks in that game. And they just couldn't do anything offensively against Virginia till really ever. Because like I said, they only scored 17 points, and one of those touchdowns was a pick 6 late in the fourth quarter. Now, the thing that I'll say about Duke, and this is where I'll give Duke a little bit credit and why I'd be a little bit nervous, is number one is they just saw you in a game where you had to lay it all on the table. You were in a win or go home situation for Virginia. You weren't holding anything back for the rematch, right? This wasn't 1998 Broncos Dolphins where Mike Shanahan was holding stuff back on Monday Night Football against the Dolphins because he knew they'd got a shot to play the Dolphins in the playoffs. They had to let it all out because they had to win that game. If they don't win that game, they're not in the ACC championship. That's number one. And then number two, you know, like I said, all the pressure's on them. And can you really stop this offense twice? Can you really shut down this offense twice? That's the part that's going to be very interesting because the other thing about Duke is very battle tested. Their non-conference was Illinois, Tulane, and UConn. And the Tulane and UConn games were on the road. Like, you don't see people going on the road playing conference games very often. And they did that, or non-conference games. They did that twice. They lost to Tulane by a touchdown. They lost to UConn by 3 points. Illinois crushed them, but that was a game that was close until like the last quarter and a half. Illinois kind of pulled away from them. But this is a Duke team that's been competitive in a lot of their losses this year. You know, outside, as I mentioned, the Illinois game. And then the other one they weren't overly competitive in was the Virginia game. Can you do that twice in 3 weeks? That's the challenge for Virginia in this game.
Yeah, I think that is the challenge. You talked about Darian Mensah. I really think that he is the key. He's the engine that makes the Duke offense go. 3,400 yards passing, 5 games of 300 or more yards. He had over 300 yards passing against Illinois, against Tulane, Georgia Tech, and Clemson, along with Elon in the opener. But he has not been very good lately. So his last 4 games, starting with a game against UConn, he had 222 yards passing through 2 of his 4 interceptions on the year. Then Virginia, you talked about it, his lowest completion percentage of the season, only threw for 213 yards. Only 175 yards passing against North Carolina. They didn't ask him to do as much that game. And then 268 yards passing against Wake Forest. So the last 2 games have been encouraging and a step in the right direction, but he hasn't been as explosive the last 4 games. And so they need him to be more than that. They need him to be Clemson, 27 of 41, 361 yards, 4 touchdowns. Georgia Tech, he has single-handedly kept them in the game. 32 of 44, 373 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's what they need to have a shot here. I just don't think that he can do that. I think he can play better than he did, but I think Virginia is good enough on defense that they can at least limit Duke. I think Duke will score more, but I just don't think that Duke has enough, and I don't think they can stop Virginia on the other side of the ball.
That's the thing right there for me. Like that's really what it boils down to. I mean, this game was 17-3 at halftime. And going into the fourth quarter, it's 31-3. I think Virginia called off the dogs a little bit in this game. Until Duke went down and had the pick 6 to make it 31-17. And what did Virginia do? They responded with a drive that took almost 4 minutes off the clock and got them a field goal to make it 34-17. I think that's the thing is Duke's defense is just not very good. And I think that's going to be a big problem for them in this game. I don't know if you agree with that, but like when I look at these 2 teams and I look at Virginia's defense, it's been solid for most of the season, especially later in the year. It's been pretty good. I mean, there's been a couple games just late in the year where the offense didn't do well. North Carolina game, the Washington State game, the offense did not come to play, but the defense stepped and make plays. The Wake Forest game, they lost 16-9. That wasn't because of the defense. Now, part of that was there was a stretch in there where Chandler Morris was banged up. He got hurt against Wake Forest, didn't play the rest of that game. That kind of factored a little bit into it. Came back against Duke the next week, threw for 316 yards, and they win that game. So I just don't know that Duke can stop Virginia. I mean, Virginia, if you look at the Fermo Efficiency Index, has the number 33 defense in the country. That's pretty good for the ACC. Miami's way up there at number 7, but I'm pretty sure looking through this, Wake Forest is at 17. Louisville, Pitt, and Virginia. Like those are the 5 best defenses in the ACC. It's a better defense efficiency wise than Clemson is. Duke's 110th. I mean that's what this comes down to. Virginia doesn't have to do anything special in this game. They don't. They have the 54th best offense in the country. Duke's 23rd. Like that's what Duke has to do. But I just don't think Duke has. Like they've got weapons. They've got a quarterback that can do a lot. I don't think their line is going to be able to protect him in this game. And I just think that at the end of the day, Virginia's got too many weapons on offense. I just don't think that Duke can do enough to protect him in this game. He's going to have to. If they're going to win this game, Mentz is going to have to carry this team. That's really what it comes down to. He's going to have to carry this team. I don't think he can. Let's talk predictions. What's your score? How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I have Virginia in this one. I have Virginia 38, Duke 24. So is that what you have? I promise we didn't go over these before. We're pretty.
I just wrote that down a minute ago.
Yeah.
So in my head I had it, but yes.
Yeah, I have Virginia 38, Duke 24. The thing about Mensah, and you're spot on with the protection. He's not a runner. He has minus 53 yards rushing on the year. So he's an athletic
good
quarterback.
Athlete, but he's right, exactly.
Yeah, he's like some ways like CJ Carr, he uses his athleticism to move around in the pocket. He's not someone that all of a sudden you blow a contain and he's gone for 30 yards. And so against ACC opponents, Duke has allowed 19 sacks, kind of middle of the conference there. Virginia does a good job getting after the passer, 25 sacks against ACC opponents. And I talked about this earlier. I said, how does Duke win games? What is their style of play? It's chaos ball. It's turnovers and it's big plays. And they're going against a team that does a pretty good job of limiting big plays and protects the football. So I just don't see Duke's path here. Their defense is not going to be able to keep them in the game. And Virginia is they're just too solid of a team across the board that they're going to allow Duke they're not going to get in a track meet here. I think they're going to be able to limit Duke. They'll limit Mensa. They'll keep him in the pocket. Duke will score more. I think they'll play better than they did the last time. It's a neutral site. It's not on the road. But ultimately,
they were
Virginia's just a better football team. You're right. You're right.
And that game was at Duke.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I just think Virginia's a better football team. One other stat that jumped out to me is just Duke allows ACC opponents to convert over 50% of their third downs. So you take a team that's a fairly efficient offense, a good ACC offense in Virginia. You combine it with a defense that, as you pointed out, does a terrible job of limiting explosive plays, but also doesn't play good situational football.
Right.
Virginia's going to get in the 30s. They're going to get in the 30s.
That's why they're 7-5. I mean, seriously, that's
exactly.
why they're 7-5.
And the ACC will be able to breathe a sigh of relief because their champion is not going to have lost to UConn and Tulane.
And Illinois.
Yeah.
Right.
Middle of the pack Big Ten team.
I love where your head's at on this. Like you talk about what did you say? I didn't hear what is Duke's third down defense? What did you
against
say they were?
ACC opponents? 50.5%.
They're 128th in the country against all teams.
Yeah.
Virginia's 14th.
Yep.
You mentioned the turnover issues. When you look at the number of turnovers lost, you talked about that. Duke ranks 24th in total turnovers lost, but they rank 32nd in turnovers gained. That, like you said, that's been their advantage. But if you look at Virginia this season, Duke's 25th in turnover margin. Virginia's 19th. They've been even better. Virginia's 17th in turnovers lost, and they're 32nd in turnovers gained. They're just as good at protecting the ball and forcing turnovers, if not better than what Duke is. So unless Virginia just gets outside their game, my only fear about Virginia winning this game is just the pressure hits them. I'll give you an example. So I've only ever come close to bowling. I used to bowl a lot. I've only ever come close to bowling a 300 once. And that was I haven't been in the league in a long time, but when my wife and I first got married, we were in a bowling league together with our parents. And I didn't really realize I was getting ready to bowl a 300 until I got to the 10th frame. He's like, okay, I got 7 strikes in a row. And I like, holy crap, I might have 300. So I walk up there. I get 6 and out, don't hit the head pin either time. Right? Like, hey, I'm a good bowler. I mean, I had I hadn't bowled in 20 years going that year. I ended up with like a 180 average despite being at like 140 after the first month of being in the league, that kind of thing. But like you get to that big moment where it's like, okay, it's on the line, and I choked. You know what I mean? Because it's a different type of pressure than the first 9 frames. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't feel pressure of bowling a 300 in frame 2. You know what I mean? It's like you get a strike in the first frame. You're not like, oh my God, I might get a 300. You know what I mean? Because your 9-year-old might be able to get a strike in the first frame. And that's where Virginia is. It's like they're just playing ball, but now it's like, dude, you've got a shot to go to the playoffs. You've got a shot to win the ACC. Does the pressure now get them to play outside of their game?
Yep.
That's the concern I have. If they play their game, and this is something Trevor pointed out last year about SMU going into play Clemson, that this is the first time the pressure's really been real on them. They've never been here before. The difference is SMU was playing Clemson, a team that's always been there. They're playing Duke. I mean, Duke hasn't played in the ACC title game since 2014? You know what I mean? Yep. So it's like, it's not like they're playing a team that's been here before or played in a lot of big moments. They're playing a team that's just as kind of new to this as they are. So that's kind of the potential saving grace. But like you said, there's no pressure on Duke in this game.
No,
All the pressure's on
nope.
Virginia.
It's uncharted
Can they handle
waters.
it? Right.
Yeah, Virginia last ACC title was a shared championship in 1995, last outright 1989. So it is uncharted waters for them.
Yeah.
And even like this year, to your point about pressure, they haven't even been the perceived front runner in the ACC all season until maybe like the last 2 weeks. It's always been Miami.
Yep.
And then it was Georgia Tech and SMU and even Louisville for a time in the middle of the season.
And you said their last championship for Duke in the league was when?
That was Virginia.
Virginia was 1989?
When was Duke's total? They shared in 89 with Virginia. They played in the Coastal Championship.
Do you know who Duke's championship game? Do you know who Duke's coach was that year?
That was Spurrier, right?
Spurrier's right before he went to Florida. Exactly.
Yeah.
Little nugget there, but I'm with. I think Virginia wins. I have 38-24, as you mentioned. I do think it's going to be a close game early. I do think Virginia's going to have the nerves early. I think you're going to see them make some mistakes. Now, I don't know whether they'll be pick sixes or anything like that, but like Chandler Morris missing an open guy, missing a tackle. There's going to be, turning the guy loose. There's going to be some nerves early in this game. There is. But I think as we get to halftime, coming out of the second half, Virginia settles in and turns it on in the second half and puts Duke away. And Duke will make some mistakes. So I think it's a 14-point game, but I think it's a Virginia pulls away late type of 14-point game. I think we're all going to be going into this game at halftime a little bit nervous. Mm-hmm. Would I be shocked if Virginia comes out and just jumps all over Duke? No, I won't. But I just think that there's going to be a little bit of nerves early in this game for the Cavaliers because, like you said, they've never been here before. Now, what's interesting is, as a team, they've never been here before. But their head coach has been part of 2 national championship football teams in the playoff era. This isn't new for Tony Elliott. Mm-hmm. He's been here before. So if he learned some lessons from Coach Sweeney, then perhaps this is something that makes it a little easier to handle it. Some of the guys that they've had transfer in, I know he's banged up and they're not sure if he's going to play or not, but you've got Jaden Thomas on this team who went through a playoff run last year, was a key member of championship last year. Chandler Morris is the coach's kid. He's Chad Morris's kid. You know what I mean? So there's at least enough of those type of players. Mitchell Melton transferred from Ohio State, didn't play a ton at Ohio State, but was at Ohio State. There's enough of those guys that transferred in that kind of played on the big stages on top of the fact that their coach played on that stage. That makes me think that they've got enough of the leadership that you need to say we're going to be okay. Let's just go play our game. We know how to prepare. Look, Tony Elliott's been a part of. Actually, let me go look real quick. He was on Dabo Sweeney's coaching staff from 2011 until 2021. So that means he has played in or coached in. Excuse me. See Dabo right here. So he has coached in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ACC championship games. He's coached in 3, 4 national championship games. He knows what the preparation needs to look like to get your team prepared to play a game. So I think that they may come out early with some nerves, but I think they settle in quicker and it won't be the nerves that cost them the game. It'll be the nerves that maybe makes it a little bit closer early. But I think Virginia pulls away. Second, third quarter, they start to pull away in this game. So, Mr. McDonough, that was a lot of fun. So those are the big Power 4 games. Now let's dive into some of these G5 games that are going to be impactful. And the first one we're going to talk about tonight, Friday night. You've got Troy, 8-4 Troy, led by Jared Parker, former Notre Dame coach.
Good for him.
Had a heck of a bounce back year this year. 8-4, and that includes a loss at Clemson where they had a 16-0 lead, by the way. They play at number 25, James Madison. James Madison finally jumped into the playoff this year. The fascinating thing about what we're seeing tonight is the three teams, the three G5 teams who are battling to get 1 to 2 spots are all losing their coach in the offseason or when the season's over. Now, they're all going to coach in the postseason, but you've obviously got James Madison, Bob Chesney, and we'll talk about the other two coaches when we get to that game, who recently accepted the UCLA job. Game's going to be played at James Madison. So some of these leagues play, Boise State, the Mountain West is going to be played in Boise, Idaho. This is another one where it's played at JMU. Tonight, 7 o'clock on ESPN. FanDuel has James Madison as a 23.5 point favorite, and the over-under is set at 46.5. So they think JMU is going to score a lot, and they don't think that Troy's going to score a whole lot. So this is an interesting game. We're not going to dive necessarily into the matchup of this game, but what's at stake for James Madison is what we really want to talk about in this game, because they don't control their own destiny completely. But in order to have the opportunity to sneak into the playoffs, they have to beat Troy, and I think they have to beat Troy convincingly. I think if you're James Madison, if Duke beats number 17 Virginia and you win in a walk-off field goal against Troy, the committee might be like, we can't put a Sun Belt team who barely beat 8-4 Troy, now 8-5 Troy, into the college football playoff when when we've got an ACC team that's might not get in. It's going to be a lot. But when you look at this matchup, for James Madison, you win and you give yourself a shot. That's the key. If you lose, you're done. You're out. Because like somebody was like, well, what about Navy getting into the bottom of top 25 last week? And I was like, well, there's no reason to put Navy in. Right now Navy's in a situation where they can't get in because it's only the conference champions that have a shot to get in. So James Madison wins, then they're sitting back on Saturday. It's going to be like Selection Sunday for basketball teams. They're going to be sitting there at 8 o'clock, probably gathered together as a team, probably have it on a big screen somewhere on campus, and they're going to probably as a team be watching the game. It'd be my guess. That's what I would do, watching that Virginia and Duke game, because if Duke wins, they've got a shot to be that fifth conference champion that gets in. So that's really what's at stake tonight. Is James Madison's got to win to give themselves a chance to be a college football playoff team. And they could be the first of all the teams to get that win, because the North Texas Tulane game doesn't kick off till 8. So it's going to be a fun ride. I don't think this game impacts the North Texas Tulane game, in my opinion, but it is a game where it could be impacted by the Duke Virginia game. So that's why that game is at stake. That's tonight at 7 o'clock. I have James Madison winning this game convincingly, Andrew. Do you see it going any different kind of way?
No, I have James Madison as well, 45-20. Looking for areas that Troy has an advantage. Like, what's their path to win? I just don't see them. I just don't see any.
No.
James Madison's been
team, but they're
scrappy.
Not.
They're going to play hard, but it's at James Madison. They have a lot to play for. They've been the class of the Sun Belt. 42.5 points per game this year, only giving up 13 points per game. I mean, the jury's out on them a little bit as well. I think James Madison is looking to make a statement. They lost to Louisville, middle of the pack ACC team. They struggled with Washington State. They beat them 24-20, needed a late score. But great story. I mean, a great story. Yeah. Joined the FBS in 2022. They've had made some great hires. Billy Napier's now going to get another shot there. They just announced that.
Yep. Yesterday,
and so I think,
right?
Yeah, yesterday. So I think James Madison, big, and then they'll wait to see how Duke does. They will also be Duke fans.
Oh, yes. Yes, that is very true. Very, very true. I have it 45-10. If you look at Troy, I said they're a scrappy team. If you look at the numbers, it's not pretty. They scored 25.2 points per game. They give up 23.9. They're a plus 1.3 points per game team, and they're playing for their conference championship. They lost to Clemson and Memphis to start the season. They didn't have to play James Madison in the regular season. Again, this is another league where the league is big and you don't play everybody. And so they were able to go through a season, and they did play Old Dominion and lost. But because there were because there are still divisions, Old Dominion, who's the second best team in the Sun Belt, doesn't get in because they still have divisions. They beat Troy 33-0, but because they're second place in their division, Troy's first place, Troy gets in. So they're a great story. I'm happy for Coach Parker. I like Jared Parker quite a bit, but they lost 23-10 at home to Arkansas State. They beat Old Dominion 33-0. Like, they're not a great. They didn't play Coastal. They did. They. I don't think they played Southern Miss. They did actually play Southern Miss and beat them last game of the year. So last game of the regular season. So I was wrong about that, but that's what got them in. They needed to beat Southern Miss to get in. They did. And, but again, they're a plus 1.3 point per game team. I don't think this is going to be close. I think Chesney understands, number one, he wants to finish strong with this team. But let's be honest too. This is a situation where you've got a chance to make a statement for the job you're going to as well. Hey, look what we did on national TV, and with a chance to go in the playoffs, we won 48-10, finished 12-1, all these wonderful things. And yeah, I mean, that's part of it too for Chesney. But I think these JMU players, they want a shot to play in the playoffs. So I think they're going to come out fired up, and I think they're going to roll Troy. 45-10 is what I have. Oh, I'm sorry, 48-10 is what I have. I think they're going to steamroll them. 8 o'clock is the big one. 8 o'clock, Yulman Stadium in New Orleans. The ABC, Friday night. North Texas, number 24, North Texas at number 20, Tulane. This is a game where the winner is in the college football playoffs. FanDuel has the line in this game at North Texas favored by 2.5. I was a little surprised by that, to be honest with you. I thought Tulane, who's the higher-ranked team, would be favored. They're both losing their head coach. The over-under is 66.5. I think that is one where I don't bet, but if I did, I would, instead of taking the -2 for North Texas, I'd take the over. There's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. A lot of points. North Texas is the number one scoring offense in all of college football. They're averaging 46.8 points per game. Their lowest point total of the season was 31 points in a win over Navy. They have scored over 50 points this season 7 times over Lamar, Washington State, UTSA, Charlotte, UAB, Rice, and Temple. And they've scored over 40 points also in a win at Army. And their one loss of the year, they gave up 63 points to South Florida, but they scored 36. I mean, they can score. And then, of course, they're going up against Tulane, a team that's been a bit of a weird team this year, Andrew, under John Sumrall. They're number 20 in the country. They're scoring 28.7 points per game, giving up 22.8 points per game. They beat Duke and Northwestern in the non-conference, which is impressive, which is why they're the highest ranked group of 5 team, despite having 2 losses in the same league as North Texas, because North Texas's out-of-conference wins were Lamar, Western Michigan, Washington State, and Army. Whereas they not only beat Duke and Northwestern, but they beat Northwestern by 20. They also played Ole Miss in their non-conference, got beat 45-10. But then they went on the road and lost to UTSA in a blowout, 48-26. So both teams had one league loss, and it was a blowout on the road. It happens. Tulane is more of a grinded-out team than North Texas is. It's a different type of team. They've won games scoring 24 points in the league, 26 points in the league, 27 points last week against a bad Charlotte team. It was 21-0 at halftime. They kind of called off the dogs in the second half of that game. But this is 2 very contrasting styles. The quarterback situation is interesting because they lost Darian Mensah to Duke, and then Jake Rensler got kicked out of BYU this summer. He comes to Tulane and takes over. It's had a pretty good year for them, but this is a scrappy Tulane team going against a high-octane North Texas team who is led by a freshman quarterback that has passed for 3,835 yards and 29 touchdowns and only 4 picks, and Drew Mestamaker. So this is going to be a very high-scoring game, in my opinion. I do think that Tulane's going to need to score if they want to win this football game. They're going to have to be on their best offensively. North Texas is going to have to figure out how do we make stops. But the fact is what's on the line in this game, the winner goes to the playoff. The winner gets a big payday. There's a lot on the line for these two teams who are led by 2 coaches who are gone once their seasons are over with. Eric Morris has been hired to be the head coach at Texas Tech or Oklahoma State, and then John Summerall has been hired to be the head coach at Florida. Who is able to keep their team focused the most is with all the distractions of conference championships, playoffs, and then those coaches leaving. That, I think, is going to be a big part of this game.
Yeah, I agree. Both coaches leaving. The American, the Sun Belt, these programs are stepping stone jobs, right? And for these, the key will be, can you hire the right guy to continue the success? I agree with the word that you used for Tulane, kind of a weird team. When I dove into this matchup and first time really looking in detail at these teams, so sure you see the scores and like know how they did and who they played, but I was a little less impressed with Tulane than I thought I'd be. They have some good wins. The Northwestern, like you talked about, Duke as well, played well in the American. But North Texas, impressive as well. And look, they score. They 47.8 points per game. And I expect them to lean into what got them there. Drew Mestamaker, great 360 yards per game. They also run the ball pretty well. That gets lost in that. They average 195 yards a game rushing against American Conference opponents. They're very explosive. They're going to try to attack down the field and gash the defense. Defensively is where they struggle. As we take a look at their defensive efficiency, 71 in defensive efficiency, giving up 29 points per game, somewhere in that neighborhood. And really against the run is where they struggle the most. Against American opponents, 247.5 rushing yards per game. Put a little asterisk by it because they did play Army and Navy, but they also were gashed by Rice. They gave 296 yards per game, or 296 yards rushing against Rice. The one thing that encourages me on the defensive side of the ball is 5 of their last 6 games, they've held their opponent to under 400 yards of offense. And they're coming off a game against Temple, where they held Temple to 316 yards, just 4.5 yards per play, which is their lowest really since week 3 against Washington State. For Tulane, I think it's going to come down to keeping the North Texas offense off the field and leaning into your advantage when you're running the football. I think they need to try to limit possessions in this game, try to keep the score down, put a little game pressure on North Texas, frustrate them a little bit if they're not getting on the field as much, and then get after the passer. Mestamaker, like you said, he's had a great season. He's a freshman. Tulane does a good job, 24 sacks in conference play. So they get after the passer. And then also when they're going back to the offensive side of the ball, if they're committed to the running game, and Retzloff, their quarterback, is actually their leading rusher this year, but if they're committed to their running game, they can extend some drives against North Texas because this is a team that allows opponents to convert 45% of their third downs in conference play. Even in the win against Navy, like you talked about, Navy drove the field on them the whole game, but it was in the red zone that Navy struggled.
And then
they
buckled down well.
They buckled down. And so one other big advantage when it comes to Tulane is special teams. And I think that if Tulane can limit possessions, special teams, their efficiency is 22nd. North Texas is 124th. So pretty even teams. North Texas, obviously more explosive on offense. Tulane, they do some things well, solid. Special teams could be one thing that Tulane could lean on as well.
So there's one thing Tulane's going to have to do, and it is the most obvious thing ever, but it's much easier. It's much easier said than done, and that is they got to get the ball. Tulane this year has 19 turnovers forced, which is 32nd in the country. They have 12 interceptions, which is 29th in the country. Drew Mastemaker has thrown 4 picks this year. 3 of them came against South Florida, the game they lost, the only game they lost. Literally in their 11 wins, he's thrown 1 pick. That's it. That's the key. I mean, you've got to harass this kid. You've got to get after him. You've got to be able to pressure him. You've got to be able to get him out of his game. You've got to get him kind of like what Notre Dame did with Mason Heichel. You've got to get him speed up his clock, make him think I got to get rid of the ball quickly, which is a little harder for him to do against him than it is for Mason Heichel, because this offense is built on the quick game, the short throws. I mean, it's like it's a little harder to get to him, but you've got to throw off different looks. You've got to confuse him pre-snap. You've got to take some chances defensively to say, hey, if we don't get to him, he may hit us on this, but he's going to hit it on you anyway. So give up a couple of those plays that they're going to get anyway to say, hey, we're going to have to get after him and force some mistakes. I'm not saying they do that all game, because they'll kill you if you do that all game. Sometimes you're going to show pressure and then drop, maybe get him to throw a quick slant into somebody's chest. But you've got to get him thinking, I'm not sure what I'm seeing pre-snap. That's a big key against Mestemaker, like with all freshmen. Like Pitt did that really well against CJ Carr. He thought he saw certain things. That's not what they were showing, and he threw the ball right into the chest of a defender. If Tulane's going to have a chance in this game, I think they're going to have to do that. I've been very impressed with North Texas. I really honestly thought that as they started getting some love for being a playoff team, that they would kind of fold, and they absolutely did not. After the Navy game was when they really started getting some respect, because remember, Navy was ranked that week in the AP and the coaches poll. They were ranked, and they beat Navy soundly. Navy was never really – like, it was a 14-point game. They didn't blow them out, but they beat them soundly. You never felt like Navy could stop them in that game. And, but he came out of that game in the next 3 weeks. They won 53-24 against UAB, 56-24 against Rice, and then 52-25 against Temple. Now, those aren't great teams, and those aren't teams with great defenses, but they scored a ton of points on those 3 teams, and they were never competitive games. Tulane is a little bit more battle-tested. In my opinion, they've played a tougher schedule. But my question is, does Tulane have enough? Do they have enough offense to score in this game? They only average 28.7 points per game. They haven't scored 40 points a game all season. They've been scoring better down the stretch, 38 against Memphis, 35 against Florida Atlantic, 37 against Temple. So that's good, but you're going to need to be at your best scoring offense-wise to be able to win this game. You're not going to win this game scoring 24, most likely 20-some points. You're going to have to score over 30 points. Can they do that? It's a great question. And then the final piece is, as I said earlier, which coach better gets his team to handle the distractions of playing for a championship, playing for a playoff spot, and, oh, by the way, this could be our last game together. That's going to be very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. It's the right questions to ask. Do you want to do score predictions now?
Yeah, let's do it.
So in terms of score predictions, I went back and forth on this one. Tulane is playing at home. I just think North Texas is a better team. I think they're playing better. I got North Texas 35, Tulane 28. So a little maybe lower scoring than Vegas thinks. I actually have the under hitting. I think Tulane can limit possessions. I do. Quarterback run for Tulane. I mentioned Jake Retzlaff leads Tulane in rushing this year. He's rushed for, I think, 561 yards. Mm-hmm. And I think QB run game is a way that you can move the chains. North Texas, like I said, not great as a third down defense. But as I look at path to victory, can Tulane take away what North Texas does really well? And I don't think they can do it for 4 quarters. Tulane really struggles to stop the pass. They're 11th in the American in pass defense. They give up 251.4 yards per game, and they haven't faced a passing offense like North Texas. They're also susceptible to explosive plays. And then what does Tulane do well? And you said it was the key to the game. It's get after the passer. They're pretty good at that, and they're going to have to sell out. But the North Texas offensive line, despite throwing as much as they do, has only given up 8 sacks in conference play. 13 on the season. So they're a good pass protecting team, despite the fact that they throw for 360 yards per game. And so I just think as the game plays out, Tulane's going to be fired up. They have the home crowd. They're playing at home. It's at night, all this stuff. I just think that North Texas can get into a game like this because they have the experience of playing the service academies. They can get into a lower scoring game, get into more of a slugfest and be comfortable like they did against Navy. And then I just don't think Tulane can take away their passing game for 4 quarters.
Agree. Here's another key part to me. You've brought this up a lot in other breakdowns. Is North Texas is 6th in the country this year in turnovers gained. They've recovered 12 fumbles and picked off 13 passes. They're also 24th in the country in turnovers lost. They've lost 4 interceptions and eight fumbles. That's a big difference. Tulane, on the other hand, is 53rd in the country in turnovers lost. I think and they're 32nd in turnovers gained. So turnovers haven't been a huge part of their season in forcing turnovers, but they have turned the ball over a lot. And in some of the games where they've struggled, that's been a big key for them. And you're going against a team. I mean, they turned the ball over 4 times in their loss to UTSA. 4 times. Only gained 0 in that game. You know, why was it an ugly game against Charlotte? You only scored 27 points against the worst team in your league because you turned the ball over 3 times. That's why. And North Texas, one of the things that Eric Morse has done a great job here is, they're an offensive generated team. But what I like about the job he did this year is he understood, look, we aren't going to be a number 1 ranked defensive team. We score too fast on offense. But they didn't sacrifice defense either. He's like, okay, so how do we be good how can we be good on defense in a league like this, right? How can we be good on defense when we are scoring the way we're scoring? Okay, we're going to be very disruptive against the pass game. They give up over 200 rushing yards a game. That's the concern I have for them in this game. Like you said, can Tulane control the ball? I think some of that is you're willing to give some of that up. I mean, if you're North Texas, you're willing to give some of that up. And then the other thing too is they did play Army and Navy. That factors in a little bit as well. They gave up 387 yards to Army, and they gave up 311 yards to Navy. So if you look at what they've done against more traditional offenses, meaning non-triple option offenses, they're giving up 179.7 rushing yards per game. That's still bad, but it's not as bad as the 200 they're giving up on the season. I think part of it is like they'll let teams run the ball. Fine, you want to run the ball because you can't milk the clock against us. We go too fast. You know, we're different. And I think that's going to be a big key. But Tulane is going to have to protect the ball better than they have in some of their big games this year. But I think what North Texas has done is, look, we're not going to just be this gauntlet that stops people. But what we're going to be opportunistic. We're going to bring a lot of zone pressures. We're going to mix up our coverages. We're going to force your team into mistakes. And that's what's worked for them. I think it's the strategy you have to be this kind of up-tempo air raid offenses. You're not going to build the Ohio State defense, the Notre Dame defense. What we have to build is a very opportunistic defense that gets stops by turnovers and creating chaos, positive chaos for your football team. And I think he mastered that perfectly this year with his football team. This was a heck of a coaching job. Their schedule was not as strong as Tulane's, not even close. They still beat Washington State by 49. Washington State was 66-6 this year. They almost beat James Madison. You know, they almost beat Virginia. They almost beat Ole Miss. Yes. And they got destroyed by North Texas, who gave them the worst beating of the season. They lost 59-10 to North Texas a week later against Washington State at home. They lost 59-24. Like, this team was dominant this season outside of one bad game against USF, who is a nightmare matchup for them. Byron Brown is a nightmare matchup for North Texas. They had no answers for him. Jake Retzler's not that player, in my opinion. So I actually like North Texas in this game. I have them winning, the Mean Green winning 34-24. I do think Tulane can keep them down more than most teams have. I just don't think Tulane can score enough on them. Yeah, that's my sense. A couple other games here real quick. This is a game that doesn't have any impact on the playoff directly, But this UNLV versus Boise State game tonight, game is at 8:00 on Fox. FanDuel has this game as a 5.5-point favorite for Boise State, who does get Maddox Madsen back. This is a game, it's a rematch, another championship game rematch. It's wild how much that's happening, despite a lot of these teams not playing each other, like in leagues. This is a rematch from a game that was played on October 18th. It was played 2 weeks after BYU or Boise lost to Notre Dame. They beat UNLV 56-31. Now, Boise struggled a little bit since then. Maddox Madsen got banged up against Fresno State. They lost that game. They lost the game at San Diego State that he didn't play. They did rally back behind their backup quarterback, Max Cutforth, and he had 2 pretty good games in a row. Statistically, they beat Colorado State 49-21, and then they had a very weird, ugly victory over Utah State this past week. They won 25-24, but he did throw for 341 yards in that game. So you're coming into this game against UNLV, a team that you absolutely dominated the last time that you played, ran for 294 yards against UNLV, and you're finally getting your groove back a little bit. UNLV, on the other hand, has been pretty hot. They lost back-to-back games. They lost to Boise and then had a bye, then came out of that bye, lost at home to New Mexico. Since then, they beat Colorado State 42-10, had an ugly win over Utah State, which is a common theme for a lot of teams against Utah State. Bronco Mendenhall's close to turning that team around. They had some very competitive losses down the stretch this year. He's doing a nice job there. But then they beat Hawaii 38-10. That's a good Hawaii team. Timmy Chang's another coach who's doing a really good job and at his alma mater. And then last week they went on the road and blew out a bad Nevada team. So UNLV comes a little bit hotter than BYU. BYU gets their quarterback back. How's he going to be able to get going? All those things are intriguing matchups. And if you want to make predictions, we can. But this is more so about, this is the one game that could be played that could impact one of the teams vying for a playoff spot that's not playing, and that's Notre Dame. Like Miami nobody's playing that Miami's played. Nobody's playing that Oklahoma played. But Boise State played Notre Dame. In razor-thin margins, does a Boise State loss hurt Notre Dame? I don't think so. You can't not punish teams for losing and then punish another team because a team that they played and beat lost, but it can help Notre Dame. If the committee's looking for another reason to say, hey, look, Notre Dame played and beat the Mountain West champion, a 9-4 team whose 2 of their losses were because they didn't have their starting quarterback who led them to a playoff berth last year. So if you're going to give Miami credit for losing to an SMU team that made the playoff last year, don't you then have to give Notre Dame credit for beating a Boise team who also made the playoff last year? So I think this is for Notre Dame specifically, this is an intriguing game. You should absolutely be locked into this game because I don't think this game hurts Notre Dame no matter what happens, but I think it could help Notre Dame if Boise State's able to win. It's being played in Boise, by the way, at Albertson Stadium.
Yeah, I see it the way that you do. Shouldn't hurt Notre Dame because even if Boise State were to lose, it's still a quality win. They ended this game 8-4. They dropped to 8-5. It's still a quality win. It's not like they're going to go from 7-5 to 7-6 or something like that. And then, I mean, there's an outside shot that if Troy shocks the world and then Duke wins and Boise State wins, then you get into a Boise State versus Duke discussion. I mean, theoretically they have a slim path. I mean, so there's something to play for
because it's about conference champions. It's not about
conference champions.
Navy's ranked higher.
Yeah.
It's San Diego State beat them. It doesn't matter. It's conference champions. So you're either going to take an 8-5 Duke team, a 9-4 Boise State team, or again,
9-4 Troy.
A 9-4 Troy, which you're not going to do.
Western Michigan,
right? You're not going to take the MAC champion because you're not going to take 8-4 Jacksonville State against 9-3 Kennesaw State. You're not going to take the winner of 8-4 Western Michigan and 7-5 Miami of Ohio. I didn't think about that, Andrew, but 9-4 Boise, who lost to South Florida, who lost to Notre Dame, who was a playoff team last year. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, if we get there, goodness gracious, where's the emergency bylaws to say, all right, Notre Dame, Miami, you're in. Like, let's stop being silly. But the one factor in this game, in living up in the Pacific Northwest, even though Boise's on the other side of the mountains and not that close mileage wise, weather for this game, low 40s, possible rain snow mix, similar to last year when these two teams met in Albertson Stadium in Boise for the Mountain West Championship. Ugly game, but UNLV plays in a dome, and Boise State beat them 21-7.
Yep.
I see a similar type of game. I did do a score prediction for this one. I have Boise 27, UNLV 16. I think that getting Maddox Madsen back is big. UNLV is not great against the pass. They give up over 230 yards passing per game. Neither team's that good at stopping the run. But Boise ran all over UNLV in their previous matchup. But I just think in the weather dome team, I just don't trust UNLV to be able to be as explosive as they were on offense the last time these two teams played, when it was like a 50-degree and sunny, great, beautiful day for football. Not going to be that tonight if the weather holds. And Boise State in the previous matchup, another way that they got UNLV was they played really good situational football. So that was a close game at halftime. Boise State came out of the half, seized control in the third quarter, and really pulled away. Big reason why they were 7 of 12 on 3rd and 4th down. UNLV was 4 of 14. Boise had 3 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. So I think they have an advantage.
They also
in the
had
trenches.
a lot of big plays in that game.
Yep.
I mean, they averaged over 9 yards
them running the ball.
Yes.
Davis
over
Riley
9 yards a play. Yep.
And so
that's going to be the
think
key for me for Boise. It's not Maddox Madsen and all that. It's can their line move UNLV around the way that they did? Because UNLV can score, but their defense, they're giving up over 28 points a game.
Right.
So that's going to be the key. They're going to have to, if this becomes a slower pace game, you're playing right. It's advantage Boise, because then the UNLV literally is getting cold on the sideline. Literally.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not even like, oh, you're getting cold. Like the theoret. I mean, literally, the longer they have to sit on the sideline, the better that is for you. There's no question about it. Yep. I like it. I got 28-20 Boise. What was your score? You said again?
27-16.
Yeah.
Boise. Yep.
Yeah. I think UNLV will be hit a couple big plays in this game. I think they'll be able to run the ball relatively well against Boise like they did last time. I don't think they're going to be able to throw it as well as they did against Boise last time, to your point, which is why I don't think they're going to score as many points. I do think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring game, but I think the Boise ground game and the Boise front takes this game over and wins this game. And then how does that impact Notre Dame? I guess we'll find out on Sunday. Last couple, just real quick, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. Don't have a lot to say about that other than what a tremendous job that the Kennesaw State coaches have done. I mean, that was a team that's very new to Division I football. Like, I think this is their second or third year playing D1 football. They were an FCS team before that. Jerry Mack, their head football coach, has done a tremendous job. He came from the Jaguars. He was with Tennessee at Josh Heupel for a few years. Took over this job and hadn't coached. He was a head coach back in the 2000 teens at North Carolina Central. Took over this job, and they went 9-3 this season. That's a team that went 2-10 last year under Brian Bohannon. And their losses were a 1-point loss to Wake Forest, and then they got blown out by Indiana, which they shouldn't be ashamed of because everybody gets blown out by Indiana. And then they beat Liberty on the road, which is a big win. And then they lost at Jacksonville State. So this is a rematch. It's at Jacksonville State. A lot of these games are played on campus sites, so it's at Jacksonville State. So let's see what they can do. I don't know. It's not going to impact the postseason, but I just shout out to a job well done for the job Jerry Mack has done at Kennesaw State. It is not easy at a program like that to go from 2-10 to 9-3 in one offseason. And two of your 3 losses were to Power 4 teams, including one loss to a bowl Power 4 team by a point. Like when Wake Forest beat Kennesaw State by a point at the beginning of the year, with me knowing how bad Kennesaw State has been, they beat them 10-9. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Wake Forest is going to be terrible. Like, you barely beat Kennesaw State, who is terrible. Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, Wake is going to suck. And Wake went 8-4 this year, and their
They were
head
pretty.
coach
They were
got
tough.
a contract. They beat
They
SMU,
were
something
scrappy.
Miami couldn't do.
Oh, that game was brutal.
Yes, so ugly. So ugly. But what a great job by Kennesaw State and Jerry Mag. I just wanted to bring that up. And I just love that Chuck Martin just continues to be good. He loses every year. They do well, and he loses all his best players to the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And the very next year, they're still a quality team. But, I'd like to see him get that win. I like Lance Taylor. I'm a fan of Lance Taylor as well. It's just more, I have no problem if he wins. Congrats to him. But it's like you feel for Chuck Martin. He's done such a great job there. It'd be nice to see him finally get, well, I should say finally, because they won the MAC a couple years ago.
They did.
But it just see him continue to have some success and get another MAC championship. And he's turned down jobs to stay there. And, he's a good dude. So I'd like to see him. He's won 2 conference championships there, but I'd like to see him continue to have some success. So that, we got some, anything else you want to add about championship weekend? We have a couple questions and super chats that we'll get to, but anything else?
I mean, it's going to be an exciting weekend of football. I mean, I think it's probably a topic for another show, so I'll tee it up for you and Trev and the rest of the guys. My concern as someone who loves the sport is just there are some ways that the weekend could shake out that further accelerate the direction that college football is going. That deeply concerns me.
Mm-hmm. Elaborate, please.
Well, I think so I actually started a thread in the Champions Lounge a couple weeks ago, and this is before we've had straight chalk for the last 3 weeks, and I called the group of 5 the elephant in the room. Mm-hmm. There's a very real chance, we talked about it, that if Duke wins, there's 2 group of 5 teams. And I think that North Texas, Tulane, and James Madison are fine teams. They've had great seasons, but none of those teams are what Boise State was last year in my mind, which was a consensus top 10 team. And you start to game plan out the scenarios, and you just take a look and say, we have teams that are on the fringe of the top 25 only because the committee has to rank them in some ways. Maybe you could argue North Texas, Tulane, fine. But the brands that they would be bumping out, Texas for sure has been squeezed out. It looks like Miami will be squeezed out. And there are situations where Notre Dame or Alabama could be squeezed out by teams that they would be favored on a neutral field by 3 touchdowns or more against. Yeah. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for the playoff that good teams are left out, because it doesn't devalue the regular season. And then you want there to be good teams, you want it to be a battle, right? You want games to have implications in the regular season. But boy, if these teams are getting bumped out for a Duke or a James Madison, something is not right about that. And sure, it's the way that it's the rules that everyone agreed to, but it's going to expand it to 16, or it's going to cause the CFP to break off and the formation of super conferences. And as someone who wants Notre Dame to be able to remain an independent and play a national schedule and schedule against these big brands, the wrong lessons are getting taken away. That's lessons
the key.
Like the Texas stuff. You talked about earlier. It's not because you lost to Ohio State. It's not. Yep. But the wrong lessons are going to be taken away. I don't have confidence that many of the powers that be have the best interests of the sports in mind.
They don't.
The media is a huge part of the problem. And if only there was some poll that the media had that you could let the media rank Notre Dame against Miami. If only a poll like that existed. Oh, wait, it does. The AP poll, where Notre Dame is 9 and Miami is what, 12?
12. They're even further apart than they are in the playoff committee.
Yeah, the CFP, if anything, is more, has them closer. So again, the wrong lessons are being taken away. It concerns me for the future of the sport and just accelerating the move toward super conferences, the move away, diminishing value of the regular season.
I think I don't know. The brilliance of what you're saying here. Yeah. The brilliance of what you're saying here, Andrew, is that it's the thought of they're going to take the wrong lessons away, or they know the lessons to take away, but they're going to use it as an excuse to get what they want done anyway.
Yes. Yes.
There's a very easy fix to this. There is no business having a team like James Madison, North Texas, or Tulane, or Duke in the college football playoffs.
Right.
No business. I can live with Virginia being in.
Yeah.
But there's an easy fix to this. Here's the new rule. If you're going to get in, you have to be ranked at least in the top 16.
Yep.
Now, Virginia's 17th right now. If they win, they'll get bumped up a spot, and they're in. But if you're not in the top 16 of a 12-team playoff, you don't get in. Or even top 20, which would let Tulane get in and only one team gets bumped out. But the reality is that BYU and Miami should both be in the playoffs.
Yes. Yes.
They shouldn't be sitting here being like, we hope that this happens in this game and that happens in that game, so maybe we can get in, because our spot right now is being taken by Tulane or North Texas and James Madison or a 7-5 Duke team. That, first of all, that's the ACC's fault. That's your own freaking fault, that one. But, like, that's the thing is, and if you do get bumped out as Miami, you're getting bumped out by your own league. And then now the only thing that gets fixed is now Miami's got to, the ACC's got to fix their league. Like, if there was a built-in rule, you can't get in, and I'll say 17. Let's just go 5. 5 past the 12. You have to be within 5 of the playoff of the top 12 to get in. So Virginia'd be okay. Tulane's not getting in. North Texas is not getting in. James Madison's not getting in. Do you know who would get in? Boise State last year. Some of the Central Florida teams of the late 2000 teens, they would get in. There's been a couple Memphis teams that would get in. Boise would have got in every year under Chris Peterson. You know what I mean? Like, those teams would get in. But these teams don't belong in. I mean, Tulane lost 45-10 to a team in the playoffs.
Yep.
What are we doing here?
Duke lost to them. And Duke lost to
right.
UConn.
Well, that's the ACC's freaking fault.
Yeah.
Because if you had that rule, you got to be within 5.
Yep.
You got to be within the top 17, or you lose your autumn. And that's true for any conference. That's true for Power 5 conference, true for everybody. If your champion's not in the top 17, you lose your automatic bid. There you go.
Yep.
The other part of it is, then if we had that, then the only issue this offseason is, hey, ACC, fix your stupid tiebreakers and do it like the grown-ups do. Because the Big Ten's got some stupid tiebreakers too, but you're never going to have a 5-loss team in the Big Ten making it, because it's too good of a league. The top teams are going to dominate. Worst case, you're going to have a 2 or 3-loss Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, and Michigan getting in. Something like that, right?
Right.
But in a crap league like the ACC, you're going to have teams going out and getting curb stomped outside of their league and getting in at 7-5, where they only lost 2 games in their garbage league. But they went out there and, got beat by UConn and got beat by Tulane and got beat by Illinois, all by 2 of those. One of those games was a blowout. So that's where it comes down to, is all we'd have to do is fix the ACC. But because you have no cutoffs, there's no, hey, it's got to be at least this. We have to sit here and watch whoever the number 5 seed is take on a sacrificial lamb that could end up being James Madison, maybe North Texas or Tulane. Maybe it ends up being freaking Duke or Boise State, like you mentioned earlier. Those teams have no business being in the playoffs. No business being in the playoffs. So, Kenny Jones says, why have any rule? Just pick the best 12. Is that so difficult? I personally would be okay with that, but they're trying to make it to where they're giving more conferences access. And I'm actually okay with that, because the problem, if you don't have some protection for conference champions, is when you have a league like the SEC, which this season is vastly overrated, teams that shouldn't be in are going to get in because you're getting overrated. So let's say BYU gets beat this weekend. Let's say it's just the top 12 teams. BYU gets beat this weekend, and they drop down below Texas. Texas doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs. If there was some level of conference protection, then okay, Miami gets in, but then Virginia leaps over Texas, because guess what? Texas doesn't belong in the playoffs, and Virginia's the ACC champ. So there needs to be some protection for the non-SEC and Big Ten schools against teams, against this notion that you're going to have the Big Ten and SEC occasionally be overrated. there's some years that the SEC or Big Ten deserves 5 teams in the top 10. And I'm okay with that if it's those years. This is not one of those years. This is not a year where Alabama deserves to be protected by the committee. They're not that good. So that's my thing is I'm okay with that, but you've got to put some sort of standard on the conference champions getting in. There's got because this has been a problem way before the playoffs. Remember back when Wake Forest made it to a BCS game one year. There was a year where UConn played Louisville in the Orange Bowl. It was terrible. They were a 4-loss team. You remember that?
I do.
They were terrible.
Yeah.
What was the year that Pitt played Utah? Wasn't it 2004 when they played Utah in I think it was the Fiesta Bowl, and it was a Walt Harris. What was their record that year? They were 8-3. They got beat by Syracuse. They got beat by 12 by UConn. They got beat by Nebraska. They needed overtime to beat Furman. You know, they needed overtime to beat Boston College, beat Temple by 5. You know, they were not very good. And then they play in the Fiesta Bowl. Why? Because they were the Big East champs. There needs to be some sort of cutoff that says, hey, you get an automatic bid if you're ranked here.
Right.
The problem is they won't go that route because it's not about finding the best 12. This is all about money to these people. Right. How can we maximize money for our league? That's why the Big Ten is floating the stupid 24-team playoff, because they want to get it down to 16. And what they're doing is, and it's actually kind of smart, well, fine, you don't want 24. Fine, we'll accept your 16, but you got to give us 4 automatic bids. Because Tony Petitti's an absolute scumbag.
Yeah.
Absolute scumbag. And fortunately, so far, Greg Sankey's fought against that because he's the only person that can stop that from happening. But that's my thing is, but yeah, I would rather it just be the top 16 teams. And if the Power 4 champions are ranked here, they get in. And if a group of 5 team gets in, it's because they're like Boise was last year, and they are good enough to get in.
The committee has shown they will respect the group of 5 if those teams are legitimate teams.
Right.
Boise
and why
State
did Boise? Why was? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then also, I know I don't think they were. They were in the American at the time. Cincinnati, made it in. They'll respect a team that is a legitimate college football playoff participant.
Because why did they respect those teams? Not because they were 11-1 or 12-0. Yeah. Because they went and played people.
They did. They could win.
What helped Boise last year? It was going on the road against the number 1 team in the country and taking them right down to the wire. Yeah. And then they beat a ranked UNLV team twice. You know, why did Cincinnati get in 2021? Because they went on the road and beat a ranked Notre Dame team. You know what I mean? Reward those teams. If Tulane would have won their league and let's just say not lost to, Ole Miss by 1 million. If Tulane is sitting here at 11-1 and all they have is a 10-point loss to Tulane, I'd be like, hey, you know what? They belong. They deserve to have their shot. They beat Duke, they beat Northwestern. But you can't get in when you lose 45-10 to a playoff team. You showed you're not a playoff team.
Yep.
So, yes. And we got these Miami fans that are just so thick. Yes, South Florida counts as a quality win for Miami. It's one of the 3 that Miami has this year. Yes, or 4, excuse me. Miami has 4 quality wins. South Florida is one of them. It's not our rule. We're not determining that Boise State's quality win. It's the committee's rule. Anyone above 500 is a quality win. So, yes, South Florida is one of the 4 quality wins for Miami, just like Boise State's one of the 5 quality wins for Notre Dame. It's not that hard to figure out. Just do a little bit of research and you'll figure that out. So, yes, that is a quality win. So, sorry that I came at you, John. I just get that question a lot. So I appreciate he said some kind words right after I hammered him. So now I feel bad. So I appreciate that, John. But I just get that question a lot from Miami fans, and they just don't want to hear it. So it's my bad, John. I shouldn't have gone at you like that. But we did have a couple super chats to kind of get through, but I did want to answer these 2 questions first too. So Battle in the Trenches says, do you think any of the G5 contenders are good enough to give the 5 or 6 seed a game or even win a game this year in the playoff? I don't think any of them are good enough to win a game. I think North Texas is the only team that can have an entertaining game if they get the right team opponent. I think that against a team that doesn't have a great pass defense, Like if they play Ole Miss in a 5-12 matchup, Ole Miss will beat them by 20, but it'll be like 50-30. Like it'll be an entertaining game. If Tulane plays one of those teams, it'll be like it was when they played Ole Miss in the regular season. Tulane can't score. Like that's the reality of it. Like, you look at how good Boise was last year, and they got smacked by Penn State. It was close for a little while. None of those teams would be in a competitive game. I think North Texas is the one that could at least make it an entertaining game.
Yep.
They'd get smacked. Like, you know what I mean? Like they could lose like they did to South Florida. Let's say they get Texas Tech or they get Ole Miss or something like that. Georgia, if Georgia loses or something like that. It'll be a high-scoring game. They'll never be in it, but it'll be, a 20, 30-point game. But they'll at least score, in my opinion. But none of these teams
if it goes like if everything happens that we said would happen, I think we would wind up with Oregon as the 5. So North Texas going out to Eugene.
Yeah.
Ole Miss would get Virginia.
That would be an incredibly high-scoring game. Oregon would win by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Be 50-something to 30, 60-30, something like that. You know what I mean? Tulane would be a really ugly game in the playoff. Really ugly game. Yeah, because Oregon would be the 5. Yeah, I keep thinking Ole Miss is 5. But yeah, they would throttle all those teams.
Who knows? Maybe Ole Miss moves up again for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, their offensive coordinator is going to be there now. We're going to put them in number 4, even though they have one good win all year. So that's ridiculous. And then the second question from Battle in the Trenches was, do we think if Ohio State wins by more than a touchdown, is there a concern for Ohio State that they aren't as hungry as they were in last year's playoffs? I don't think so. I mean, I think if they beat Indiana by more than a touchdown, I mean, that shows me that this is still a hungry football team. You don't beat Indiana by more than a touchdown if you're not hungry, if you don't feel like you have something to prove. So I'm not concerned about that. If they get beat in the playoffs, it's because they played a team that matches up well with them and beats them. Ohio State's one of the teams that can win it all. Indiana's a team that can win it all. I think there's 5 to 6 teams that I think can get hot and win it all. I think it's Ohio State and Indiana. I think it's Notre Dame. I think it's Georgia. I think it's Texas Tech. I do believe Texas Tech could get hot and win it all. I don't think they will. And I think you could argue that Oregon is in Oregon as well. Like that's the 6 teams I think are capable of winning. I don't think Ole Miss can. I don't think Oklahoma can. I don't think Alabama can. I don't think BYU can. So all those teams can win it, but all those teams can get beat by each other also. I don't think A&M's capable of winning it all because I don't think their defense is good enough. If they play a team that can slow their offense down, they're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
Yep.
And we saw that against Texas. So I don't know. I don't think Texas A&M needed to get a bye. They needed to only have to play 3 games. You get that extra game, they're going to play somebody that's got kind of offense that can go against them. There's a chance they got to play Bama in the first round. I think they can beat Bama. Mm-hmm. But if things finish where Bama wins it all, wins the SEC, and Notre Dame still is in, you're playing Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
So Michael Cannon said, cut those 6.5. What would it be? In my opinion, if you say who are the 3 teams that have the best shot to win it all, I'd probably say Ohio State, Notre Dame. Honestly, I like how Oregon's playing right now. I do. I think those are the 3 best teams right now. Because the Oregon team that we saw against Indiana is not as good as the one we've seen. November made them better. They had to battle. Mm-hmm. I think it made them better. Dante Moore's really coming to his own. They're getting healthier. I think Oregon, even more than Georgia. I just don't think Georgia's offense is good enough to go on a 3-4 game run. Mm-hmm. That's my concern.
Yeah, that Oregon.
Somebody said if Miami gets in, they can. The line play travels. I think if Miami gets in, they can win a couple games. At the end of the day, I just don't think Carson Beck can play 4 games of championship caliber football. That's the drawback for me. But their defense and their offensive line and the talent they have a receiver, I think Miami can win a couple games. I don't think they can win it all because I don't trust Carson Beck in those moments. Yep. They play a team with a good pass rush, they're screwed, which is what cost them against Louisville. Yep. So that's why I don't think – but I think Miami could get in and win a game. I just don't think they can go on a 4-game run. That's what they'd have to do. Go ahead, Andrew. Cut you off.
I was just going to say to your point about Oregon, you always know that they have the athletes, but the win against USC, they were the more physical team. And USC tries to run the football this year. Could not run the football on Oregon. And then this last game against Washington, Seattle's a tough place to play. Washington does not lose often at home, and Oregon controlled that game from start to finish. Damon Williams is a dynamic quarterback, and Oregon controlled him the entire game. He was out of sorts. It's a scary team, and their path.
They went on the road in bad weather and ran for 261 yards at Iowa.
Yeah.
When Iowa still had a shot to play for the Big Ten championship. That showed that. I said then that showed me something. Now, was it an ugly win? Yeah, a lot of teams have ugly wins over Iowa. Iowa's a good football team. But that game showed me something about their toughness. Like Miami going to Pitt in 30-something degree weather and smacking Pitt showed me a little something about Miami. Like a buddy of mine was like, yeah, Miami's going to come up to Notre Dame next year in early November and it's going to be cold. I said, bro, they just went to Pitt and smacked Pitt. Yeah. I don't think Pitt's that good. The point is the weather didn't get in their head like it did when they played in the Sun Bowl. So I think we need to kind of be on the look, say, look, they went on the road, and we thought preseason, like, look, Virginia Tech on the road, Pitt on the road. They're going to lose one of those games because of the cold. Well, they won both of them by double digits. So that's where I'm at. But you said the path for Oregon. You were talking about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, it'd be North Texas and then Indiana. In all likelihood, get the rematch with Indiana. And I mean, it's tough to beat a team of Oregon's caliber twice. And so that'd be a great game. And then they'd get Georgia or Texas Tech. And, if the seeds hold.
Yep. I think this Oregon team can make a run. I think they're the three best poised. I'd probably go right after that. I'd probably rank it Georgia, Indiana, and then Texas Tech.
Yep.
That's how I'd rank those six. Let's get to some more questions here. We just have a few here. James Salumi tuned in late, but did you see Bavacqua on McAfee? No, because we were doing the show, but I definitely am going to be looking forward to watching that when we're done. I hope he put a strong case. I had somebody, because I went off on Notre Dame the other day. I was like, why do I feel like I'm like I said, I feel like I'm like Jon Snow in that meme where he's, got a sword and there's just him and a bunch of people, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm waiting on the dragon to come save me. Like, why am I the only one fighting this fight? And a guy reached out to me and goes, well, you ever thought that Notre Dame's trying to take the high road? And I said, let me ask you a question, bro. If there's a political battle in your town and one guy's just fighting dirty and the other guy just sits back and takes it and is just going to take the high road, who's going to win that election? It's going to be the guy that ran all the negative ads, because that's just how, as a society, that's who we are. I hate it. I don't like it, but that's a reality. He goes, well, I don't think Notre Dame's going to go low. Notre Dame doesn't have to come out there and not give the middle finger to everybody. And Pete Bavacqua doesn't have to trash Miami. He just needs to fight for Notre Dame. That's what I want to see. You don't have to name call. You don't have to insult. I can do that because I just am tired of the stupidity that I get on Twitter. But anyone that's willing to engage me in real talk, I'll debate with you. I'll state my case. I had a Power 4 head coach reach out to me yesterday and said, do you really believe this? I said, yeah. And I gave him this long answer, showed him my graphs and everything. He's all right, cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. But like, I'll debate this with you. But like, why is it just us? Why is it us and like one other site that are fighting this fight? Where are you? So I'm looking forward to seeing Pete Bavacqua. I guess he was on Pat McAfee. I hope he stated his case and stated it with some authority. Doesn't mean you have to get insulting and dirty and get in the gutter, but you better fight. You better stand up and fight. And I hope that they're finally doing that, because I just don't know if that's who Marcus Freeman is. I think because he's so locked in on team glory and the messages to the team that I don't think he wants to get into the weeds of it. And maybe someday he'll learn. But like, I don't care about you fighting that fight. Your AD better do it. But what I need you to do is not let freaking Pitt get that last touchdown on the board and not let Stanford get those last 2 touchdowns on the board. That's what I need you to do. And then let me and ISD and Pete Bavacqua and, other, well-known Notre Dame alums, Mike Golick and people like that, let us fight that fight then. But that's who needs to be stepping up. Pete Bavacqua needs to be the front and center. If Dan Radicavich is going to be out there running his mouth, if Jim Phillips is going to be out here running his mouth and tweeting stupid things, then you need to as well. So that's kind of where I'm at on that one. So Aiden Benami, cheers to all top 0.5% listeners for IB on YouTube. So apparently Punch people got like their scores of most watched shows, and there's people that were in the top half or got their little IB notifications and put those up. So I appreciate y'all very much. IDN also says 24-27 early enroll. That's impactful and amazing thoughts. That's 24 of Notre Dame's 27 signees in the 2026 class are going to be early enrollees. The only ones that aren't, I believe, are Ian Premer because he plays basketball and baseball. I think it's Gregory Patrick and one other offensive lineman. I have to go back and look. But I think that is amazing. And they need it. I mean, they're going to need the extra arm in the spring at quarterback. The running back depth chart's going to need that. You're not going to have Kedron probably this spring since he got hurt in fall camp. He probably won't be healthy with a torn ACL in March. You know, you're going to get some playmakers at wide receiver. Who knows what your receiver room looks like? So, you know, and then Ian, I was hoping Ian Premer could get on campus because he's got a shot to play for them next year. But, you know, Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Utade getting 5-6 month head start in the strength program. That's going to be fun. Kari Adams getting coached up by Mike Mickens for an extra few months. That's going to be fun. So, yeah, I think it's amazing. I really do. I just think the most staggering statistic of all is Notre Dame's 0 decommitments. And the only kid that even visited another school was Thomas Davis Jr., who visited his dad's alma mater after they offered him as a sign of respect to his dad's alma mater. And then that next week was like, yeah, I'm going to Notre Dame. So that says a lot about the type of young people that they brought in. And it also says, as I mentioned to y'all before, Notre Dame will compete in NIL, but they want kids who the decision is not made because of NIL. NIL's got to be a factor, but it can't be the only factor. And here's the last one from AST12321. Voting with my wallet for guys covering Notre Dame who vigorously back our guys in their playoff resume instead of shiving them in the back to help a hated rival. I appreciate that very much. I'm not really sure what I can say about that. I respect the person who said that. He was very good to me when I got into this business. I just think it was a bad argument. It was a very weak argument from someone who I otherwise hold in high regard. It's just a bad argument. I don't think what USF did last year matters unless you're going to say, well, then Notre Dame beat Boise State, who was a playoff team last year and ranked higher than SMU, by the way. You lose to 2 unranked teams, your whole, well, we won the head-to-head stops mattering. When you lose to 2 4-loss teams who are unranked, stops mattering. The records are the same. The records aren't the same. Because Notre Dame lost to number 7 and number 12. You lost to 2 4-loss teams who are unranked. In the last 2 years, Miami has lost 4 games, all in their league. 3 of them were to unranked teams. One of them was to a team that finished number 21. Beat those teams and you're in both years. Just beat one unranked team per year and you're in back-to-back. You're in last year and you're in this year. It's real simple. It's not because you beat Notre Dame. Beating Notre Dame is the only reason it's even close. So it was a bad argument. That's, you know, like I said, from someone I otherwise respect. You don't have to agree with someone to still respect them. I think it was a bad argument. But and I had a coach ask me, like, do you really believe that? Or, you know, that, or do you have to say this? I don't have to say anything. I own my own business. I'm my boss. My boss is me. You know what I mean? You don't like what I say, call my boss. His name's Brian Driscoll. You can find him at brian@irishbreakdown.com. I'm pretty sure he's going to side with me, though, because he is me. I say these things because I believe it. When the data changes, I change my opinion. I thought Notre Dame should have been ranked ahead of Oregon until I found out what the actual data the committee looks at and said, okay, if you look at that data, I can't argue this data is why Notre Dame should be ahead of Miami, but this data should also be why they're ahead of Oregon because they don't have the data to be over Oregon. So change my opinion. It's not that hard. Be honest. And so when someone gives you their honest opinion, even when it's a bad opinion or something you disagree with, I think there should be some level of, well, at least you're being honest with me. I just think your opinion is wrong. And then argue the merits of their case. That's where I'm at. If you think I'm wrong about Notre Dame being in, debate it with me. Give me data besides, oh, head-to-head trumps all. No, that doesn't. It's not even the number one listed thing on the committee's own thing. It's not even their number one data point on their own thing. So debate it with me. Give me something. Look at you got to show some semblance of knowing what the data the committee looks at. And I think too many people fall victim to the head-to-head trumps all and, well, the records are the same. The records aren't the same. Because if it was about the records, then why isn't North Texas ranked higher at 11-1? Why aren't they ranked ahead of Miami? Well, they're 11-1. Yeah, but their schedule exactly. So the record doesn't tell you the quality of the team. That's the problem. Well, head-to-head matters. Okay, then why isn't SMU and Louisville ahead of Miami? Well, because of their schedule. So what you keep telling me is that the context of your record matters more than just your record. Right? So head-to-head this, head-to-head that. Okay, until you get to one that doesn't work out for you. Why was Miami ranked ahead of Louisville when they were both 7-2 and Louisville to beat Miami at Miami? Where was your outrage then? So it's just about engage the data. When you engage the data and can make your case, then I'll accept it and I'll embrace it. Because there are some teams like I'm not going to sit here and try to say that if Notre Dame should be in over Texas Tech. Do I think Notre Dame's a better team than Texas Tech today? Yes. Do I think Notre Dame deserves to be in the playoff higher than Texas Tech? No, I don't. Same with Oregon. Do I think Notre Dame's a better team than Oregon? I think they're a much better team than Georgia. I think they're definitely playing better than Georgia right now. Do they deserve to be ranked higher than Georgia? Nope. I'm close. Because their resume doesn't speak that. I think the only team right now playing better than Notre Dame is Ohio State. That's it. But that doesn't mean Notre Dame should be the number 2 seed. You have to be willing to embrace the data. And that's where I'm at. So, and Raymond Horton, you're right. Yes, ESPN would never allow me anywhere near their studio because it would not go well. That is not their friend. So, yeah, so we'll have that fight. And we'll find out this weekend. And again, I appreciate that support, AST. I do. It puts me in a tough spot because I don't like the argument that was made, but I respect the person who made it. So that's a tough one. Are you familiar with what's going on with what I'm talking about there, Andrew? Are you aware of the heat?
I am aware of some of the heat. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, with Miami, look, when Miami had beaten Notre Dame and they were undefeated, they were number 2 in the country. They were given all the respect that they should have. And then when they lost 2 bad games, they dropped back. It took them 2 losses to fall behind Notre Dame in the AP poll. And it doesn't make any sense that Notre Dame should have to continue moving back as Miami moves back, even though Notre Dame is playing better. So it's yep. Yeah.
That's a fact. That is an absolute fact. Yeah. So this is what I'm talking about, Kennedy Jones. Miami's strength of record are nearly identical. It's manipulative to paint a picture that Notre Dame's strength of schedule record is significant. A, never said that. B, this is what you guys do. You give like 1 or 2 data points that fit your narrative and then ignore all the others. And they're nearly identical, but who's higher? Notre Dame. Who's higher in game control? Are they close? It's Notre Dame. Who has the better metrics on offense and defense? It's Notre Dame. When you look at them combined, it's Notre Dame. Who has the better field position advantage, which is a data the point that the committee looks at? Notre Dame. This is the whole point. You keep pointing to Notre Dame because you are too simple in your head to understand that you have a better argument against Oklahoma and Alabama and Ole Miss than you do Notre Dame because you don't understand what the committee looks at. Doesn't matter what you feel. Doesn't matter what Josh Pate says. He's wrong too. He has no idea what the committee looks at, or he ignores it to play to the rage from his audience, the SEC people in his audience, the Miami people in his audience, to protect the coaches who are good to him and let him in their rooms. I don't play that game. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you what the committee looks at. And what the committee looks at, Notre Dame's resume is better than Miami's, which is why they keep saying it's significantly better than Miami's. They're not nearly identical. If you know what they look at, they're not identical. If you're going to tell me they're identical, then what you've said to me is I don't actually know what they look at other than what I hear on ESPN or see on Twitter. That's the problem. And if that's all you got, I'm wasting my time talking to you. Go do the homework, and you're going to see that Notre Dame controls the vast majority of the metrics. Are they big? No, they're not giant, which is why Miami's 12. But they're better. And you know what would have made them not better for Notre Dame? If you'd have beat SMU or Louisville. It ain't that freaking hard. Just beat one of them. Just beat one mediocre team in your league that you lost to, and you're in. Because you know one thing we wouldn't talk about if they just would have beat Louisville or SMU? We wouldn't be talking about where Notre Dame stacks up against Miami. It wouldn't be a discussion. We'd be praying like crazy that both Bama and BYU lose this weekend. It wouldn't be that hard. And you know what also you'd be doing if you were a Miami fan and you just beat one of two unranked teams? You'd be playing for a championship tomorrow night. They're not in because of them, not because of a biased committee and all this other crybaby crap that you hear from Miami fans. Know the data the committee looks at. It's real simple. It's real simple. You keep coming back with stuff that you've just heard on TV or on Twitter, and you don't understand how that impacts. So if you're going to say margin of victory, the committee doesn't care that Miami punched in a touchdown at the end of the game or that Stanford scored 2 garbage touchdowns. You know what they're going to care more about? The game control, which showed Notre Dame was up 42-3 35-3 on Stanford at halftime, and Miami was tied 7-7 against Stanford at halftime. Do you think they're going to care more about the score at the end of the game when Stanford scored 2 garbage touchdowns, or are they going to look at the game control in the first 3 quarters? If you knew what you were talking about, which you clearly don't, you'd understand that they don't just box score watch. Only simpletons do that. People that study data, people that are trying to make real decisions, not be fanboys for their garbage team because they can't beat unranked teams in their own freaking garbage league, which is why a 5-loss team from their garbage league is playing in their conference championship. What about this? What about this average margin of victory? Okay, let's look at average margin of victory. Oh, great. You kept your starters in and were throwing bombs with 40 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Why? Because you knew Notre Dame had a better resume than you, and you thought that the committee was going to be blindsided because you think they're as dumb as you are, that they're just going to look at the box score because they're as dumb as you are. No, they look at the games. That's why they have coaches in the committee. They watch the freaking games. They look at the stats. They see that Notre Dame has not only outscored you in those games, higher yards per game, lower yards per game allowed. Higher yards per play, lower yards per play allowed. Because you know what Notre Dame's not doing? Throwing touchdowns at the end of a game because they need brownie points. I'm actually pissed that Notre Dame doesn't do that. Because if they would have put Stanford away the way that they should have, we're not having this conversation. Because they weren't tied 7-7. Miami and Stanford, it was a game at halftime. It was a 7-7 game. The Notre Dame-Stanford game was over at kickoff. That's when it got out of hand for them. It was 35-3 at halftime. And you want to talk to me about margin of victory? Only simpletons will make that argument. Miami fans are a bunch of simpletons. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Because you got nothing below surface level. Oh, our margin of victory is better. I know we were tied 7-7, but the committee's going to respect the garbage touchdowns we put on the game at the end of the game. No, they're not. Anyway, I just had to go off on that because I'm so tired of these just dumb Miami fans. Again, they're not all dumb. These dumb Miami fans that just give me this dumb stuff that you heard somebody else say that you don't understand what they're looking at. Nobody cares that a team scored garbage touchdowns at the end of the game, whether it's Stanford getting them against Notre Dame or Miami getting them against Pitt. Nobody cares. You were beating Syracuse 14-0 at halftime. Notre Dame had 35 points at the end of the first freaking quarter. You want to talk about a margin of victory? You had one game where you were more impressive. The NC State game, I'll give it to you. Notre Dame was up 10-7 at halftime. Miami was up, it was like 24-7 at halftime. That was a more impressive win, no doubt. Nobody with a brain or an honest bone in their body is going to try to tell me that Miami looked better against Stanford than Notre Dame did, Miami looked better against Syracuse than Notre Dame did, or that Miami looked better against Pitt than Notre Dame did. Nobody with a brain is going to tell me that. Miami was losing to Pitt in second quarter of that game? They were down 10-7. Notre Dame
everything unraveled with the missed field goal for Pitt. Yeah.
Yes.
They missed the field goal to tie the game late in the second quarter, and everything unraveled.
Yes.
Yep.
So it was they were up 7-3 in the third quarter, and then Miami took a 10-7 lead. They never led Notre Dame. Never. It was 17-7 at halftime. Notre Dame was up 21-3 at halftime. Notre Dame's defense outscored Pitt's first team offense. It's 9-7. Actually, no, it's 9-0. 9-3. So again, know what you're talking about, because I promise you, if you come to me with lazy stuff, I'm going to smash it because I'm not an idiot. like you are. I know the data. You don't. If you're going to pretend that it's they're living off of 73, I just gave you the Stanford and Pitt examples. What have you had to say there? Nothing. So at least know what you're talking about. Because if you come to me and you don't have facts, it's not going to go well for you. It's not. You're going to look real bad and real dumb. So if you're okay with that, then keep saying dumb things. Some people clearly have no problem embarrassing themselves in front of the public. I'll keep saying dumb things. I'm going to double down on saying something dumb. You can get away with that with a lot of people. You're not going to get away with that with me. I'm just telling you right now. You're not going to get away with that with me. So, sorry. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. So, that's my rant. Got anything to add before we go?
Amen to that. No, nothing to add.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go try and save my voice and enjoy some football tonight. We have, 4 games tonight?
Yeah.
And then 6 games tomorrow. 2 great days of football. And Sunday, whatever the committee is going to do, we're going to know on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then we can either be here on Sunday and we can be mad about it, or we can be happy about it, whatever the case may be, but at least we'll know. It's as simple as that. And if Notre Dame doesn't get in, guess what? It's because they didn't handle their business in the first 2 games. If Miami doesn't get in, because they didn't handle their business against Louisville and SMU. Both teams had a chance to handle their business. And they didn't handle their business, which is why we're sitting back hoping that the committee will do this, committee will do that. Handle your business and you don't have to worry about it. Simple as that.
Yep.
So anyway, for Andrew, great job today. Absolutely great
Thanks,
job
Brian.
today. Amazing.
Oh, this is a blast.
Appreciate you, man. Yeah, we'll have you on again. But for Andrew, I'm Brian. Have an awesome rest of your day, and we will talk to you guys again here very soon. We will go live on Sunday after the committee, or for the committee reaction. We'll go live and break all that down, good or bad. We'll be going live and either be talking about why Notre Dame was left out or who Notre Dame is going to play. And we'll have that conversation. So I'm looking forward to that. Just to know at this point in time. It's like, it's almost kind of like, yeah, I want him to be in, but I just want to know. That's where we're at. So we can stop having these same stupid conversations over and over and over again. So anyway, have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.